Gotcha. Thank you, Chris. Looks good. Yeah, there's a show. That's a show. That's Sean Merriman. I saw him. He was at PJ's yesterday. I'm sorry?
Sorry, do you know what table number this is?
148. Yeah. Welcome aboard on this Would You Rather Wednesday. Good afternoon, Tampa Bay. It is The Drive with T. Kraz, Tom Krasnicki, presented by Moss Nissan, and we are coming to you live once again from Radio Row in New Orleans at the Convention Center, the site of Super Bowl 59. Great to have you with us on this day 3, where this is more and more busy as we are continuing to count it down to the big game on Sunday. A lot of activity happening here on Radio Row, and we are so proud to be a part of it. We are live in living color, don't you know, at 95.3 on the FM dial, the mighty AM 620. Download the new and improved iHeartRadio app. Select us as one of your favorites. You can do that with the new preset feature on the iHeartRadio app. We are streaming from anywhere in the civilized world through the app, so it's a beautiful thing. Check us out there. And yes, we have got the streaming up. Good afternoon to all of you who are watching us via the video stream. We're streaming on YouTube at 953 WDAE and AM 620. Like and subscribe all day, every day. If you get on the stream, you'll be able to see the commotion taking place behind me. It is incredible as we are at day 3 of Radio Row as we lead you up to Super Bowl 59. Nick Wise is with me here on site doing a great job. And, of course, Chris Mathis back at our Rude Air and Water Studios. The phone numbers, you know them, you love them, now use them. 888-546-4620. That is the number. Well, you know what? Get your ass on the phone, and maybe I will let you start and then finish. You can text in your thoughts at 82945 on the Bartow Ford DAE text platform, where standard message and data rates do apply there. And all guests here on site will appear via the Central Florida Behavioral Health Network DAE hotline. So we've got an enormous show for the next 4 hours, leading you up until 7 o'clock. And it's going to start really at the bottom of the hour, where we're going to talk all things NFL, all things Super Bowl. The lead odds maker for Caesars Sportsbook, Greg Mucklow, will join us coming up at 3:30. So much money has been bet on the Super Bowl out in Vegas, and obviously with the Hard Rock Bet app, you can do that here in the state of Florida. But we'll talk to Craig Mucklow about where the bets are going and some of the more popular prop bets. Maybe we can put together a parlay for you through the Hard Rock Bet app. Craig Mucklow is coming your way at 3:30.
You going to tell him how much money you took from Caesars last night?
I will absolutely tell him how much money I took from Caesars. Nick and I, we went to this media party, which was fantastic, by the way. The NFL throws this media party every year in the host city. So we're at this party last night, and it was exceptional. There was food from every big-name restaurant here in the New Orleans area, so you can sample some Creole, some shrimp here, gumbo, jambalaya, shrimp pasta from Drago's, which was just out of this world good. It was my favorite thing that took place last night, and there were drinks, there were lots of people, and it was a really great time. And then we took a walk down the block, and right there in the heart of downtown, not too far from the convention center, is the Caesars Casino. So Nick and I went in there. We saw quite a few people in there, including Jason Kelsey, walking around the casino, and some guys who work for the Pat McAfee show. They were there, but we had a good time, won some money. So it was a really good night here in New Orleans. But we're going to talk to Craig Mucklow coming up at 3:30. Greg Auman is here from FoxSports.com, covers the Bucs in the NFC South. There's plenty to talk to him about. In regards to the Buccaneers, more news today as the Buccaneers make a hire. So we'll get with him. Greg Auman will join us at 4:05. Former NFL GM Thomas Dimitroff will be with us at 5:05. So we'll get his thoughts on the Super Bowl. He has interviewed for general manager jobs very recently, so we'll ask him about that. We've got Would You Rather also here at 5:30. And then in the 6 o'clock hour, talked to her this morning. She will finally be here in person. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network. Yes, will be here, so we'll talk to her. And there are so many people walking around here. Rob Gronkowski was walking by. We're going to try and get him for tomorrow. All these guys are busy. Well, the question here, Tommy Boy, is are you going to make it here to Radio Row? I would probably say not, but Tom Brady is going to be calling the game on Sunday for Fox, obviously, so maybe he'll be here at some point or another. But the activity here today is absolutely ramped up to the first degree as compared to yesterday and certainly on Monday. So we've had some great guests already this week. Yesterday was awesome, by the way. Trevor Sycamore was here. Kurt Schilling was awesome. Some of the comments that he made are going viral from our interview here yesterday on Radio Row. And Ryan Leaf was awesome, too. Gerald McCoy joined us on Monday. And we've got another star-studded guest list here today. Tomorrow, Friday, we are efforting to get some big names to visit us here on Radio Row. So it's been an awesome time so far, and I'm really digging the experience here in New Orleans. It's been great. I think the people have been very affable, very engaging. The food
is insane.
Nick Wise, how about that
incredible.
food?
It's incredible. By the way, do you have Ryan Leaf? You've had him on before, right?
Yes.
He won't be on again. I think I offended him.
What did you say to him?
I didn't. It wasn't supposed to be offensive, but I think he took it that way by the look that he gave me. You know, like when you're a sports fan, you get nervous when your team is about to lose or at the end of a game. And I told him he gave me that first feeling as a sports fan in that 98 Rose Bowl because I thought he was going to win the game for Washington State. And when I mentioned that to him, because obviously that was a tough day for him, he lost. He just gave me the weirdest look. And I was like, well, I'm glad we already interviewed him because he's probably not going to – I didn't mean it in like an insulting way. Like he played a part in my childhood. I was letting him know, but I don't think he cared.
I think that's going to bounce off a guy like Ryan Leaf.
I hope so.
There have been so many things said about him over the years.
His look was just like, whoa. I was like, sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, you probably didn't care for that, but I don't think he's going to, write us off. I thought we had a good time and a great interview with him. I'm sure he'll be back. Thanks, Nick.
Sorry.
Try not to annoy other people.
Leave me home next week.
And oh, by the way, that's not the only guy you annoyed. That was the guy you annoyed yesterday.
Oh, yeah, you're going to bring this up? Yeah, Warren Sapp.
If you want to bring it up, you can.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
So, yeah, Todd Bowles, I don't know if it's such a laughing matter, but Nick tried to get some FaceTime with Warren Sapp, who was making the rounds here on Radio Row. And anyone who knows Warren Sapp knows, he can be quite difficult at times to talk to. So you could explain how it all went down.
Yeah, so Warren was doing an interview with a radio station, and I grabbed him afterwards, said, hey, can you come on to Tampa? He goes, I already did Tampa. I guess he hopped on another station. And I said, no, we're at a different station. And this is all while we're walking the hallways, right? So I'm like the annoying guy pestering him from behind. And I was like, no, will you come on in Tampa, WDAE? And he's like, I already did Tampa. And I was like, yeah, but we're a different station. And he stops. He turns around, and he's like in my face, and he goes, you don't think I know the F you guys are? And I was like, and then that was it. He turned around and he walked away. And I was like, well, I guess we're not going to get, we're not getting Warren Sapp today.
Yeah,
so.
not at this time. No, it's Todd Bowles. No, not at this time or next time or the time after that. And that's okay. I'm perfectly fine with it. biggin.
He's weird.
He is definitely different, and he's been through a lot of hardships and some of that brought upon himself. But, look, he's just one of those guys that, look, everyone's had a moment like that with Warren Sapp where, he has pissed off a lot of people, including a lot of fans, too, over the years. But that's just who he is, so I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. 888-546-4620, text at 82945. So we got some good news today as a show. Barrett Sports Media, run by Jason Barrett. I've known him for many, many years. I mean, they're one of the media leaders in terms of covering and analyzing media. And every year they come out with these rankings of now they're doing all different formats, which I didn't even know, from AC to classic rock. And I know some of our iHeart stations made their list of rankings. We're proud to say that we're one of the top 25 afternoon sports radio shows in the country when it comes to major markets. So really good accomplishment. I would like us to make the top 10 next year, Chris Mathis, but you're certainly a part of that success too, as well as everyone here, Nick Wise, and everyone here at the AE. So we are honored to be mentioned among the top 25 sports radio shows in the entire country. So kudos to us. And Chris Mathis, you're a big part of that, buddy. Yeah, the drinks are on the house. That's right. I think that would be fantastic. We sure are. So, I mean, that's a great honor to be mentioned among some of the. And look, there's lots of great sports radio stations and afternoon drive shows all over this country. So to be among the top 25, and we actually came in at number 25, so we barely made it, but we're there in the top 25. It is certainly an honor. So we got a huge show. We're here at Radio Row, where it is absolutely hopping. The other guy who will not be joining us, thanks to Nick Wise, is Cam Jordan. And this is not your fault. I'm just joking. But we efforted to get Cam Jordan on, and his people were like, what did they say? Thanks, but no thanks?
Yeah, it was like, they were like, well, where are you at? I said, Tampa.
We're right here.
And they were like, eh. And I was like,
we're literally right next to the New Orleans Saints table.
How we got paired up with them.
I don't know either. Gerald McCoy obviously had some things to say about that when he joined us on Monday, but he's literally like 30 feet to our right, and obviously he did not want to come on. So listen, neither here nor there, but we did effort to get Cam Jordan as well, and he said thanks but no thanks, and which is
weird
fine
because they hit us up, and they wanted him to. They hit us up to bring him on, and I don't exactly know what happened, but the second I said Tampa, he was not interested in Tampa. That's
why. Okay, they hit us up. They brought it back to him. Hey, here's who wants to interview you. He knows it's Tampa. He knows it's DAE. And honestly, we've exchanged barbs on social media, to be quite honest.
But where Tampa did come into play and help us out is I was standing over. Gronk was doing an interview with FanDuel. And the lady, his publicist, was just like, you said Tampa, right? And I said, yeah. She's like, let me get your email. He'll be back tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to get Gronk on. He's not doing any other radio. But as soon as I said Tampa, that excited him. Gronk loves Tampa.
Gronk loves Tampa. It is exciting, and we love him. So there's a chance that we could get Gronk tomorrow, and we're reaching out to some other big names for tomorrow and Friday. But we got some big names joining us today, and we could have some more. Craig Mucklow, Greg Auman, Thomas Dimitroff, Cynthia Freeland, and a whole lot more. Plus, Would You Rather here live from Radio Row. We're a day closer to Super Bowl 59. History, obviously, is hanging in the balance. The Chiefs are going for the three-peat. The Eagles stand in their way. And a very interesting statement made by the great Patrick Mahomes in regards to our Buccaneers. That is the theme of our opening drive here on a Wednesday, live from Radio Row. Hit it. The opening drive here on The Drive, presented by the award-winning Chattanooga Whiskey 91. Available at your favorite Tampa retail store. Drink Chattanooga Whiskey, and as always, enjoy responsibly. So this really made some headlines last night. Patrick Mahomes meeting with the media. We're a day closer to the big game coming up on Sunday. And a very interesting question asked by a member of the media in terms of, hey, what has been the low point for you in your NFL career? And get ready, Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans. Here was Patrick Mahomes and the question and answer. Pretty easy indeed. And he, without hesitation, you heard him say Super Bowl against Tampa. Boom. Pretty easy. There you have it. So, listen, that would have been my low point, too, if I had a bunch of guys, chasing me all over the field behind, Tom, Dick, and Harry as his offensive line. Yes, we did say that, Levante, and you were one of the guys that were chasing Patrick Mahomes and Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea. Mahomes took a beating that night, and that was a game, and it still is a game that haunts Patrick Mahomes to this very day. So I thought that was a very interesting remark. And look, he was being quite frank about that. And look, that game also sent the message, and coming out of that game, the Chiefs and their hierarchy said, listen, we got to do something because Patrick Mahomes hurt his foot. He's getting chased around all over the field. We lost the Super Bowl because our offensive line stinks. We had all these guys that were trying to fill in. We're going to do something about this. We're going to completely change over our line. And they did. What did they do? They went out, they drafted Creed Humphrey. They got Trey Smith. They drafted him. And they signed Joe Thuney in free agency. And, they also, got Donovan Smith. He was a stopgap version. But now the interior of their O-line is about as good as there is. Joe Thuney was an all-pro guard, but now he's playing left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's done a really good job filling in because left tackle has been a sore spot. So he has at least solidified that position moving forward. And look, that's how you beat Patrick Mahomes. That's how you beat anybody. That's how the Giants were able to beat Tom Brady in those two Super Bowls. You get pressure, and more pressure. What do you know about pressure? It's the pass rush, and especially up the middle, but we got guys coming in off the edge. You are at an advantage. So I thought that was a really interesting response, and I know a lot of Buccaneer fans picked up on that response from the press conference yesterday. And look, if the Eagles are going to pull this off, that's where it's won and lost, right there in the trenches. And their O-line is absolutely dominant, one of the very best in the NFL, if not the best. Detroit is also very good with their O-line. The Buccaneers have a very good O-line. I mean, those three O-lines are right there in the upper echelon here in the NFL. So after that game where Mahomes took that beating and they lost to Brady and the Buccaneers, I mean, the Chiefs are like, look, to hell with this. We need to get serious about protecting Mahomes. And look, to their credit, they did. And that's why Brett Veach is one of the best GMs in the NFL. And Jason Light's name is certainly going to be right there in that conversation. So that's why the Chiefs are in this position, because from ownership down, they know what they're doing and they know how to get things done. 888-546-4620, text at 82945. We'll talk to Greg Auman about that quote and a lot more. There is news regarding your Buccaneers. We got Craig Mucklow at the bottom of the hour from Caesars. We'll talk to him about the bets that are coming in and the player prop bets and everything else. He will join us coming up in a few minutes. Greg Auman at 4:05. But there is news regarding the Buccaneers. They have filled another spot on their coaching staff. They needed a defensive line coach because Casey Rogers took that same position and went over to Detroit. And it's a familiar name that's joining the Buccaneers as their defensive line coach. It's Charlie Strong. Obviously, Florida Gator coach at one point, USF coach at one point, went 21-16 and was summarily dismissed back in 2019, but he certainly made the rounds. I didn't realize how old Charlie Strong was. He's 64, man. So he's been around, and he's been the head coach also at Louisville in Texas as well as USF, and he's had a lot of stops around the NFL. He was at Alabama last year as a defensive analyst. So interesting how they come up with all these different job titles and everything else. But now He is the new defensive line coach of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy with a lot of experience. Charlie Strong is in, so he joins Todd Bowles' coaching staff, and we'll get the thoughts of one Greg Auman. He's going to be with us coming up at 4 o'clock, and Would You Rather is also going to be quite spicy. So we are live here on Radio Row. Great to have you with us. It is The Drive. It is fantastic. The activity is starting to ramp up, and wait until you see tomorrow and Friday is what everyone is telling us here along Radio Row is in terms of the amount of people that will be here. I mean, when I walked in here today and I saw Greg Olsen, I saw Myles Garrett, by the way, he is here. Myles Garrett, he's making the rounds, he's doing interviews, and we efforted to try and get in front of Myles Garrett, and we were rebuffed. They said, he's slammed, he's busy, he's got this interview, that interview, but we attempted to get Myles Garrett here, but it was a no-go. There's so many big-name people here, and there's so many, not only radio stations, television stations, Fox Sports is in front of us. The NFL Network is in front of us, ESPN, CBS Sports. I mean, all the big networks are here. So many radio stations are here, and so many podcasting entities are here as well. It is amazing when you walk around, and I'm like, I've never heard of this podcast company, that podcast company, but that is the new wave here in 2025 when it comes to broadcasting. It's all digital. That's the direction it is going. That's why you need to download the iHeartRadio app and get us through the app. It's a beautiful thing, and people are finding different ways and creative ways to consume content, and podcasts obviously are a way to go. And commercial-free podcasts of this show are available, by the way, through the iHeartRadio app. And any interview that you may have missed, and we've done so many in the last 2 days, we've got so many coming up today. Undoubtedly, we'll have more tomorrow and into Friday. 953WDA.com. Click on The Drive. We've got commercial-free podcasts there. Any segment, any interview you may have missed can certainly be found there as well. All right, great to have you with us. We're live here on Radio Row. It is The Drive with yours truly. Nick Wise is here. Chris Mathis back at our Rude Air and Water Studios. We'll get your calls and texts. Also on the other side, a record amount of betting already. And we're not even to Sunday. We're at Wednesday for the big game, the Super Bowl coming up here in New Orleans on Sunday. So where is a lot of that money going? What about some of the popular player props as well? Craig Mucklow, he is the lead odds maker for Caesars, and he will join me here on Radio Row coming up next. You are listening to The Drive.
Tampa Bay Sports.
You're done. Returning at 30.
Grand Slam. Listen for your chance to win $1,000 at the top of every hour, weekdays 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Got a chip or crack in your windshield? Call the Glass Doctor. We bring 3 decades of auto glass excellence to your doorstep. Why drive for service when our mobile glass shop on wheels brings leading edge equipment and expertise to you?
Call the Glass Doctor, will fix your paint.
WDAE.
Traffic update from the Moss Nissan Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Discover.
Seeing delays in Tampa, northbound 275 in the area of Dale Mabry, westbound I-4 just a bit slow through Ybor City approaching 275. Building traffic on eastbound I-4 near I-75 and in St. Pete. Northbound 275 a bit slow from before Tropicana Field to 22nd Avenue North. Get traffic info around the clock by searching News Radio WFLA on iHeartRadio. I'm Randy Myers.
Guess what? Discover's accepted at 99% of places to take credit cards nationwide. You heard right, 99%. If you don't think so, maybe it's time to face facts. You're stuck in the past. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/credit card.
What's the Anna Jar and Levine difference? If you're the victim of a car crash, you will always speak to a lawyer. You'll always get the highest standard of care from our dedicated legal team, and we'll always fight to get you the maximum compensation you deserve. That's the Anna Jar and Levine difference. Call our legal team right now for a free consultation. Call 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733. Don't wait. Call 1-800-747-FREE.
Main office, Tampa.
Hey guys, it's T-Kraz here. I want to tell you about my new obsession, Daisy French Onion Dip. Man, do I love it. I had some people over last week to watch the game. I had this dip out there with chips, wings, and veggies. They
Jeez. What's up? Put them up. Put them up. All right, welcome back live on Radio Row, The Drive with yours truly, Tom Krasnicki, here on WDAE Tampa Bay. Great to have you with us on this lovely Would You Rather Wednesday. Your calls and texts are always welcome at 888-546-4620. Text at 82945 on the Bartow Ford DAE text platform, where standard message and data rates do apply there. We certainly have a star-studded guest list on the show today, into tomorrow, and into Friday. And Thomas Dimitroff just passed by us. He's going to join us a little bit later on here on the show. I thought he was stopping by and sitting down, but no, he'll be on coming up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. You know, the 1 hour thing is really like throwing me for a loop here. I hate it. 888-546-4620. Yes, 5 o'clock with Thomas Dimitroff. 4 o'clock here. Craig Mucklow from Caesars, the lead odds maker for Caesars Sportsbook, will join me in a matter of moments, and we'll get his thoughts on where a lot of the money is being bet. Last year's Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the 49ers set betting records at the Nevada Sportsbooks. More than $185 million was bet on that game. And a lot of the money were coming in on the Chiefs. The odds of that game, by the way, going into overtime, which it did, were around 10-1. So some people might have cleaned up on that one as well. So every year, more and more money is bet on the Super Bowl, and a lot of people like to go with player props, and there's certainly some interesting ones on there available. You know, if you go on the Hard Rock Bet app, there are so many of those. And I guess when we do Let It Ride tomorrow, we're going to get into exactly all these player props and which ones have a chance of hitting. And, you know, Saquon Barkley, I mean, that one is going to be the biggest one in terms of, you know, over 100 yards, way over 100 yards rushing. I'm trying to pull it up right now to find out exactly just what that looks like here. And, you know, we'll try and put together, you know, a 4 or 5 bet parlay and try and make you some money in the process. And hopefully Craig Mucklow can join us in just a little bit. And he's a little late on this arrival, and that's usually how it works here. Sometimes people don't get here on time because they're pulled in like 4 or 5 different directions, certainly. But, you know, we'll get him on. I know Greg Auman will be here coming up at the top of the hour at 4 o'clock. Greg is here. He was on our flight, by the way, when we arrived first thing Monday morning here to New Orleans. So he will join us. We'll get his thoughts on the Buccaneers hiring Charlie Strong to their coaching staff as a new defensive line coach. So we'll get all of that, you know, situated with Greg. And then we got Would You Rather a little bit later on. And we certainly have a lot of interesting things on the table for Would You Rather. And then Cynthia Freeland in the 6 o'clock hour. She will join us as well. All right, he is finally with us here, the lead odds maker for Caesars Sportsbook, Craig Mucklow, on Radio Row, joining yours truly, Tom Krasnicki, here on The Drive, WDAE here in Tampa Bay. Craig, welcome in, buddy.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. And I was just going over the numbers, and you're well aware of them from last year. Record amount of money being bet on the Super Bowl, over $185 million out in Vegas. So tell us about this year's projections as to how much money is coming in.
We hope it'll break our handle record in New Orleans this year. It's a home game for Caesars because we sponsor the Superdome. We've got great property downtown where people can go wager as well. So we expect it to break handle records again, and it helps having 2 phenomenal teams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, without question. By the way, Nick and I, we were at your establishment last night, and we had a good night, by the way. So we thank you for that. So you've got some interesting prop bets that are making the rounds. I mean, you can bet on anything from the length of the national anthem to the coin toss and everything else. And right now it looks like it's even Steven between heads and tails. Imagine that. And of course, Super Bowl most valuable player, Patrick Mahomes, right there at the top.
Yeah, it's quarterbacks 33 times have won the MVP, if I remember correctly. Yep. It's always a quarterback award. liability-wise, C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay was bet today as well. So those are the two that we'll be cheering against right now, yeah. And we'll offer that as the game progresses as well. So you can bet that as the game happens. So those numbers will change. If, a couple of years ago, Cooper Kupp won it, Aaron Donald probably rightly should have done it. So remember, it's up until the 2-minute warning. So you've got to get your wages in before then if you're wagering it in play.
Greg Mucklow's with me, the lead odds maker for Caesars Sportsbook here on The Drive live on Radio Row. And we're discussing some interesting player props. And one of the more popular ones I was just discussing right before you sat down, Craig, was Saquon Barkley, who's had an incredible year. 112.5 rushing yards is his rushing prop. So what kind of action are you seeing on that?
Every bet seems to be Saquon Barkley right now. On the touchdown market alone, he's 3-1 on ticket count to the next best. It's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, and the 112, you could break that in 2 rushes, judging from what he did against the Commanders. So it's a lot of interest. We'll be cheering on the Eagles, but we won't be cheering on Saquon. Sure.
So you're seeing a lot of action on the over then?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, why would you bet an under on Saquon the way he's performing? Literally, we get worried when our running backs are liability and they're a couple of yards out from the end zone. But as you saw with the Commanders, he could break one from 70 yards out and straight away it's cash. So, yeah, it's been popular. Tremendous class act this year, a hell of a season. So, yeah, I mean, look, as fans, we cheer him on. From a sportsbook's perspective, we have an average game.
Well, and honestly, if I were to wager on that, I think I would go under. A lot of people going over.
It's a big number.
It is a big number. And 112.5, which you can absolutely do based on the Eagles' O-line, and they're going to come into the game coming off the bus looking to run the ball. But Steve Spagnuolo on the other side, I mean, he's going to go all out. The Chiefs have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in their last 9 playoff games. So if I were to bet on that one, I think I would go under. I know I'm in the minority on that.
The shrewd money's always on unders. Mm-hmm. The public always bet the over. The one thing I would always say as well is if you think the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, then Saquon will get a lot of his yards in the second half when they're killing the clock. So that's one thing to be mindful of as well.
Craig Mucklow's with me from Caesars Sportsbook, going over some of these player props. A lot of money's being bet on the big game, as you might imagine. And A.J. Brown, to me, is an X factor. And you've got him at 71.5 receiving yards. I would actually go over. I don't think the Chiefs can handle him. And, if Jalen Hurts can really throw the ball down the field with accuracy the way he did in the NFC title game, I think A.J. Brown's going to eclipse that. Are you seeing a lot of action there?
Yeah, A.J. Brown's going to be exceptionally popular this week on the MVP market and on his receiving yards. Again, if the Chiefs' game plan is to stop Saquon Barkley and his rushing, then you've got to beat them through the air. And that's where you see a lot of money on that on the opposite side. So, smarter bettors are betting the under on Barkley's rushing yards, and then they're taking the over on the receiving yards on certain players.
One over I do like is Patrick Mahomes. We all know that a lot of his big plays come when it's off scripted. He scrambles out of the pocket and he makes plays with his legs. 28.5 rushing yards is the prop for Patrick Mahomes. I'm going over on that. What say you?
I'm a big Mahomes fan in the playoffs and he's rushing because he doesn't rush as often in the regular season. It's tough when we set the line as well because you're looking at 2 different seasons basically.
Right.
So you get to the playoffs and you're playing. Every game matters, obviously. We have seen interest from sharp customers on the under attempts at 5.5 on Mahomes, but the rushing yards, he could break that in 1. I mean, he's athletic enough. But yeah, it's a good bet.
And on the other side, Jalen Hurts, we know he can get out and run. Now he's got this knee problem, and a lot of his rushing yards are coming through the tush push.
Yes.
So 39.5 rushing yards. Are you seeing more overs or unders on that?
We're actually seeing under on that one.
Yeah.
Obviously because of the tush push and the knee injury. So one of the things we would normally have a higher number on Hurts. Because of the injury, we've lowered that, and we did see some action from sharp bettors when we opened up the prop on the under.
And I would agree with that. So are there any other prop bets that you're noticing a lot more activity than you would see on a certain prop bet that's taking place for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the top 5 is always moneyline spread total. Then you have the coin toss, which is always popular, and Caesar squares. So you can pick the last digit of each team's final score.
Right.
And that'll pay decent odds. My driver yesterday when I was leaving the airport was telling me he's in his $50 pool in the bar, and he got 9-6. I'm like, well, how much do you win? And he's like, yeah, $100. I'm like, you can get 80 to 1 at Caesars on that one. So like, why bother? Things like that. The Texans and Chargers playoff game that ended 2-2 on the squares, and that was 200 to 1. And one customer had the foresight to see it, and it was a scoregami as well. He had $50 and won a cool 10 grand.
Wow.
And those are the kind of bets that you don't need to have big bets. You have fun. And
Right.
you've got an interest for the whole game.
Yes.
You could be cheering on a 2-point conversion, a no 2-point conversion, a missed extra point, everything.
It makes you weird. It's kind of like fantasy football. You start pulling for like the weirdest scenarios, like to help you out. And that's how it is with the squares. I mean, you'll be watching that game. Even the most casual of fans, everybody does one of those Super Bowl party squares, and it keeps everyone engaged. And it really is a fun prop to bet as well.
And it gives you interest for the entire game, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's great for recreational bettors.
So do you think, in closing, Craig, do you think we're going to eclipse last year's money that was bet? More than 185 million bet on last year's game. Are we going to top that number?
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. We're already on that trajectory already. It's action. There's a lot of action the first week and a half, but still 60% of the money comes on game day. So it will really ramp up come Sunday.
All right, it's awesome that the Super Bowl is here, and great to have you on Radio Row. Caesars Sportsbook is humming, and Craig Mucklow is the lead odds maker for Caesars, so check them out there. Craig, thanks for joining me. We appreciate it. Good luck with the big game on Sunday.
Thank you. We need it.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah. Listen, we didn't take too much money from you guys last night, but we had a lot of fun over at the Caesars Casino right here in the downtown area. Craig, we appreciate it. All right, coming up, more of your calls and texts. Greg Auman will join us at the top of the hour. Stay with us. We are live on Radio Row. This is The Drive. Greg, thank you so much.
Congrats last night.
Yeah.
What were you playing?
I was playing Ultimate Texas Hold'em. I just played table games. Yeah, I was All right, welcome back. We are live on Radio Row, day 3 of the drive with yours truly, presented by Moss Nissan. I want to thank them for all their support. We're here in New Orleans. We've had a great time this week. You just heard from Craig Mucklow of Caesar Sportsbook, giving you some great insight into some of the prop bets that they are taking in. And I find it very interesting in terms of, like, you know, the coin toss and some other prop bets. And a lot of the bettors, at least when it comes to Caesars, are going over on the 112.5 rushing yards for one Saquon Barkley, and I could certainly understand that logic. I just think that you shouldn't undersell Steve Spagnuolo and what kind of defense that the Chiefs will bring to the game here on Sunday, and they will challenge the Eagles. They will challenge Saquon Barkley, and they will, play, stacked fronts in order to prevent him from busting those big plays. And look, the Chiefs haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher, in the last 6 years in the playoffs. So it's going to be a challenge. Now, can anyone do it? Yeah, Saquon Barkley and the Eagles right now are executing their offense and running the ball unlike anything we've seen, the last 20 or 30 years here in the NFL. So he can certainly get to that number. But if I were to place a wager on that prop bet in particular, I think I might go under. Honestly, because I would not, sell Steve Spagnuolo short and that Chiefs defense. They're outstanding. Chris Jones is a very tough man to block, and that's going to be a very interesting matchup, certainly in the interior. And the Eagles have a tremendous O-line. Their tackles are outstanding. And Mekhi Becton, the former first-round pick of the Jets, has really found a new home at right guard, and his career has been resurrected thanks to the Eagles and that system that they're in there. So I love talking about these matchups, and we'll continue to do that, I think, today, tomorrow, obviously into Friday, and, in anticipation when the excitement starts to build, the hype. And I think today we're starting to get more exciting. I mean, when I walked into this building earlier today, it's like, okay, now we're getting down to it. Now we're getting close to game day, and there's a buzz in the air. There's a certain electricity here that the game is, getting closer. You can tell by the amount of people that are here, and everyone's just kind of running around, and there's shows taking place, local radio shows, national radio shows, podcasting companies. I mean, all the major networks are here, and certainly the who's who in the NFL, they are walking around here as well. We didn't see that yesterday or the day before, and that just gives you an idea that, we are getting closer to the big game, and this is going to be quite the spectacle here on Sunday. We're not staying for the game. We'll be back in Tampa on Saturday, but certainly being here for Radio Row is what we signed up for, and it has been nothing short of amazing. 888-546-4620, text at 82945. So, it's on the line on Sunday. And, with a victory, the Chiefs can obviously, etch their name into the history books for 3 straight Super Bowls. Mahomes would get his 4th ring. Obviously, you would put him in the conversation with Tom Brady if they could pull this thing off on Sunday. And then you're talking about a guy like Joe Thuney. We talked about this yesterday. All-pro guard. He's been playing left tackle the last few games because the Chiefs needed someone out there. They have no left tackle, and he has kicked out the left tackle. He's done a really good job in protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side, and he has certainly been integral in this Super Bowl run as well. Nobody talks about the big old offensive lineman necessarily. We know the Eagles' O-line's pretty good, and I think the Chiefs have done a really good job as well with their O-line. Creed Humphrey might be the best center in the game. Trey Smith, a pending free agent, by the way, a right guard's been very good. Joe Thuney at left guard was an all-pro, and now Thuney's over at left tackle, with Jamar Taylor at right tackle, the former Florida Gator, trying to, protect Patrick Mahomes there as well. I think Mahomes will make some plays with his legs, and, his rushing yards prop, by the way, 28.5. I think it's a slam dunk. I'm going over. Over. And Andy Reid usually wants Mahomes to protect himself, but that's the part of his game that makes him special. when the play breaks down, he's got great pocket presence. He gets out of the pocket. He senses when the rush is coming. He gets out and he runs and he makes big plays. Or, on a drill play, the scramble drill, that's when Travis Kelce is also at his most dangerous spot, when Mahomes, scrambles out of the pocket and, you have to, cut your route off and follow the quarterback and everything else. And that's when, Mahomes and Kelce make some of their biggest plays. But I think 28.5 rushing yards, I'm going over on that. I think that's a slam dunk. And every parlay that I put together this weekend through the Hard Rock Bet app will have that prop bet on there. Absolutely. Believe you me. All right, 1 hour's in the books. 3 more hours to go. Coming up, he's with us here on Radio Row. He has found us. Greg Auman, FoxSports.com, will join us. The Buccaneers add to their coaching staff, and Patrick Mahomes makes a very interesting admission last night, and it had everything to do with the Buccaneers. We'll talk about that with Greg Auman next, live on Radio Row. Stay with us. Pretty easy indeed. That was Patrick Mahomes yesterday. That loss to Brady and the Buccaneers still haunting Patrick Mahomes, but he has an opportunity to make history on Sunday. If he can win, it'll be a three-peat for the first time in the Super Bowl era. One day closer to Super Sunday. Good afternoon, Tampa Bay. Welcome back. It is 4:02 on your ride home. The Drive with yours truly, T. Kraz, Tom Krasnicki, presented by Moss Nissan. We are live on Radio Row. Great to have you with us for day 3 as we get closer to the big game on Sunday. The activity is starting to ramp up here on Radio Row. A lot of people walking around, a lot of big-name people walking around, and we are right here in the middle of it. Got Nick Wise here assisting on site, doing a great job. And, of course, Chris Mathis back at our Root Air and Water Studios. More of your calls and texts coming up, but he is with me here and joining us right now in the Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, DA Hotline. Learn more at cfbhn.org. Covers the Buccaneers and the NFC South for FoxSports.com. Our guy, Greg Auman, is here. Great to see you, buddy.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me on, man. This is a cool place to be. If you're an NFL writer, you want to be at the Super Bowl. Nothing else you'd rather do right now this time of year.
Well, without question, and we certainly appreciate you hopping on. You were on our flight coming in on Monday morning, which was great. But your experience so far in the last couple of days here has been what?
It's been good. I've done a little bit of both. I'm kind of primarily writing the Eagles here, but I've been at pretty much all the Chiefs pressers as well. I don't know that there's one team that seems that much looser than the other or tighter than the other. These are two teams that went head-to-head just 2 years ago in what was a really close game. You can see the Chiefs very aware of the weight of the possibility of being the first team to do something. So, I think you kind of expect Philly to be the looser team just as a team that's still trying to get, for most of those guys, their first ring.
I thought it was interesting, and you just heard the audio coming into the segment. Mahomes says, yeah, man, that loss still sticks with me. It was pretty easy. I mean, he said it right away. Yep.
There's not a lot. I mean, I don't even know what would be next on the list. Mahomes, I think, is 17-3 in his career in the playoffs. Just a ridiculous level of – Brady thinks that's a good level of success. Okay?
Well, he lost at home to Brady in the AFC Championship game, too, so that's got to be a close second.
Right. I guess that'd be what you'd say next. But to have – just the dynasty run they've had, and you think about what the Bucs did just to get in the way of it for a year. It's all the more impressive now seeing how well they've handled that same challenge, whatever it is, 3 other times they've been there.
Jalen Carter apparently is sick today. He missed his media availability. That guy's been a dominant force for the Eagles along their defensive line. That's something to keep an eye on, huh?
Absolutely. No, I think he's a difference maker in the playoffs, forcing fumbles, pressure up the middle. You think about Philadelphia up front, I think even Jordan Davis had a sack in the NFC Championship game. In terms of putting himself in the spotlight, elevating the recognition level of who he is, I think he was a high draft pick, a guy people saw glimpses of, but he's a guy that can take over this game on Sunday.
Greg Auman is with me, FoxSports.com, covers the Buccaneers and the NFC South. We're live here on Radio Row here in New Orleans, one day closer to the big game. All right, let's talk some Bucs. They make some news. Charlie Strong, a very familiar face to the state of Florida and USF and the Florida Gators. He is back in the coaching ranks here, and he's joining the Buccaneers. Tell us.
Yeah, it's neat to see. Obviously, a wealth of experience. You have a guy who's been a head coach at the highest level. I don't think he's coached defensive line specifically in 20 years, but a great defensive mind. He's 64. has had just about every other Florida coaching job you can have. Gators, I think 3 different times, Jaguars, Dolphins, USF. And I think it'll work well. I think that's something where they had a chance to shake things up, to bring in somebody new. He's not going to have anything more than defensive line as his title, but I think that's an area where you think about strengths of this team. You think about Vita Vea, you think about Kalijah Cansey. He's got some really talented guys to work with, and I think we'll probably have a hand in shaping this defense and tweaking this defense as well.
Are we sure that Liam Cohen's not going to try and steal him too?
Right. I was like, is that an agreed to terms thing? Is that a signing? Yeah, Cohen. And then again, you guys have talked about Mike Greenberg. I mean, that's a big thing for them to not lose Mike Greenberg as well. I mean, I think if you'd lost Spytek and Greenberg in the same year from the front office, that's 2 guys that have been absolute mainstays and central parts of everything that's gone right for this team.
Mike Greenberg withdrawing his name from consideration for the Jags general manager position. We were talking about this yesterday. Been with Tampa Bay for 15 years, so he and Jason Light obviously lockstep, working in unison. Great salary cap guy, obviously. And your thoughts on his decision to stay here? Look, because becoming a GM is something I'm sure he wants to do at some point, right?
Yeah, and it's that tricky deal where it's just, you want to do it. I think you want to do it in the right situation with the right team. For Mike to be such a big part of the voices that were trying to keep Liam Cohen here. For a moment there, thought they were keeping Liam Cohen here. I think it's tough to go from that and the way that went down, and then to turn around and go to that team, even if it's an opportunity that you've, again, like you said, waited 15 years for, waited an entire career for. I think Mike, to his credit, is confident that with continued success, he could be the guy that ends up taking over here. He'll have other opportunities as they continue to have the success they've had to interview for more jobs a year from now, too.
Do you think the Buccaneers maybe stepped up and made it worth his while, or adjusted his contract, or gave him more money? Are you hearing any of that?
I hadn't heard that. I don't know that this is necessarily about money, but I think it's one of those where, first and foremost, he's just a tremendously loyal guy to Jason. And I think, again, it doesn't feel quite right to have things go down the way it did, and then to go on the other side and kind of go to that person, go to that team, if you will. I can understand, even though it would have meant a lot to Mike to be a GM in any circumstance, why you might hold off there.
But, and you just touched on it too, I don't think he wanted to go up there and work with Liam Cohen. And I don't know Mike as well as you do, but that probably made him uncomfortable. Like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be that guy that jumps ship and goes up there, because I don't know how long that situation is going to last either.
Right. It's one of those where I think there's definitely a value in knowing a head coach and having a relationship and existing understanding of how that person works and who they are. I think it almost, because of the way it changed at the end there, I think it almost worked against you a little bit. Jacksonville's, I think, asked for 6 different guys. One of them was in the Rams front office where, Liam would have had some experience with him couple of years ago. Again, especially if you're the rare first-time head coach who gets a chance to play a role in the search for a GM, that's not how the power structure normally works. But for Liam, you wonder if he's going to get somebody he hasn't worked with and a new face that he might not be as familiar with.
Right. And, there are pitfalls there too, because as you know, these guys want to be able to hire people that they know and that they've had a prior working relationship with, not a total stranger. And you don't know how he's going to mix with some guy they bring in from the outside that he has no familiarity with.
Yeah. In fact, Liam, to his credit, I think has probably gone outside that window, that comfort zone a little bit. Anthony Campanile, the guy they hired as the defensive coordinator, I don't think he's worked with him. I think there's a circle within the coaching community where you know who the good young minds are. And even if you haven't worked directly with them on the same staff, I think there are friendships and relationships that you can build on and trust somebody enough to hire them.
Greg Auman is with me live here on Radio Row. So I'm sure your social media feeds, like mine, have been filled with, we got to go get Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett is here, by the way. Nick and I saw him. We tried to get him, but his handler's like, he's too busy to talk to us. It was big timing us. Imagine that. But Myles Garrett wants out, and the Bucs obviously have a screaming need for an edge rusher, and fans want to know, what are the chances that the Buccaneers maybe try and get this guy? I think they'll at least make a phone call, right?
I think everybody in the league should make the phone call. It's one of those where, for the Bucs, obviously, edge rusher is probably one of their bigger needs. I don't know that they're a team that has $35-40 million sitting around waiting to be spent. Even if you moved on from Chris Godwin, even if you made some moves to free up space, Jason Light's a guy who values his draft picks tremendously. I think with the Bucs picking at 19, you're probably going to have to package that pick with another first-round pick, maybe even a player, to be honest with you. I think it is rare that a player of Myles Garrett's stature in his prime comes available at all, if he is available. He wants to be traded. I don't know that Cleveland wants to trade him. Not only are you going to have to give up just an absolute ransom of picks to get him multiple number ones, you're also going to have to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL.
Yes.
What he's making right now is good money. If he was happy with that, he wouldn't be asking to be traded. So, like I said, it's going to be $35 to $40 million a year. That, for a Bucs team that, again, maybe isn't paying as much to a quarterback as some teams where you'd say it's viable, I think it would really limit their flexibility. Even though he is a game-changing, absolute wrecker of a pass rusher, I think they probably like the flexibility. I don't think they want to give up multiple drafts. I think they know they've drafted well. It's easy to sit here and say, well, first-round picks, if you're trading Hargraves and JTS and those types, no one minds parting with those. It could be a worse. It could be that pick used properly can be a much better player. So my instinct right now is that even though it's a big need for the Bucs, I don't think they'll be willing to give up enough to outbid 30 other teams for Myles Garrett.
I think it's unlikely, and if you put a percentage on it, I don't know. Yesterday on the show, I said 25%, and I don't think it's more than that.
Yeah, there's 30 teams. That's 3% each. I'll go crazy and say 10 or 15% just to get people excited. But again, there's lots of teams with more money to spend. Teams that are honestly probably closer to a championship that Myles Garrett might like to join as well.
Greg Auman is with me. So with that being said, how do the Buccaneers go about in solving their woes at edge rusher? And I think they need another corner. I saw Jamel Dean last week. He was at the sneaker soiree, and obviously his health has been a real big question mark. Bucs need a corner. And look, all of their needs, big needs, are on the defensive side of the ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be surprised if they don't use 4 of their top 5 draft picks on the defensive side of things. Even if Godwin leaves, there's not a glaring hole on the offensive side of things compared to defense. Like you said, edge. I think whether Levante David is back or not, you have to draft a linebacker. You have to find a starter in this draft. If it's not to put in next to Levante David, it's with the idea you're going to have to replace him sooner than later. You said corner. I agree there. Those are 3 spots that you can find starters in the draft. I mean, they've had good success in the second and third rounds in recent years. You think about what they got with Tyke Smith. You think about Jalen McMillan. They need more of that. So, no, they don't have as many picks. They're down to 6 this year. So it's not like there's a lot of ammo to trade up. But like I said, I think they'll go into this offseason. Free agency, you can get a good linebacker without spending an incredible amount of money. So I could see them going that route. For at least one of their linebacker spots, just so it's not 2 rookies or 2 young guys eventually taking over there.
Matthew Berry right there from NBC, longtime friend and colleague. Greg Auman is here. So I wanted to ask you, because Gerald McCoy was here on Monday. So we chatted, and he said he talks to Levante David all the time. And he said Levante David wasn't going to come back last year. And then he changed his mind. The Buccaneers probably gave him a nice sales pitch. We know the 49ers were interested at one point, correct?
Yeah. It's one of Levante, again, if he's 35 years old, in linebacker years, that's long after most guys are done. I think he played at a better level, a higher level in 24 than he did in 23. So I think it's just a matter of, do you think, you want to go out on top. You want to go out at least with a winner, with a playoff, with a division champ. If he thinks this is that team again, I think he played well. I think he pushed through injuries. Your body's going to give way at some point, but he looked better last year than he did the year before.
He sure did. And my guess is that he's probably going to come back. And the Bucs want him back, right? Because he provides that leadership. He can still play. And that was one of the things that he said, the day after the season was over, is that, look, I know I can still play. And I know I love the game, and I think he'll probably give it one more year. I mean, it's not set in stone, but whether or not he comes back or not, you absolutely have to draft a guy, most likely. Servassier Dennis, I think the Buccaneers are relying on him too, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dennis is a guy that probably would have been a big part of the answer this year. And I think in terms of injuries go, as much as we talk about Winfield, as much as we talk about the corners being down, that was a big loss for them. If you look at the way Servassier Dennis was playing week 2, week 3, as a complement to KJ Britt, as the pass coverage half of that platoon, if you will, they really lost something with him. And I think they spent most of the season trying to find an answer and a replacement for him without necessarily getting an answer. Playoff game, I think they used 3 different guys next to Levante. So a healthy Servacio Dennis is a great start towards having that. But like you said, even if Levante's back, you have to be preparing for his eventual departure. You have to have somebody you like. If you can groom that guy and give him a year with Levante to learn from the best, that's a huge help. And then a year from now, if you're having this conversation, at least you know you have somebody who's had the chance to learn from him and pick up all of his good habits and then eventually take over for him.
I want to ask you this, because I talked about this the other day. Baker Mayfield obviously just had the greatest year of his NFL career. Incredible. 41 touchdowns, 4,500 yards, 71% completion percentage, all in the top 3. And he was the only quarterback in the top 3 of those statistical categories. 2 years left on his contract, Greg. 30 this coming year and then 40 next year. He is vastly underpaid. And at some point, look, he's not going to make a fuss about it because the Buccaneers gave him that opportunity. And I'm sure he's grateful, and he's here in Tampa Bay, but he's established now. He's 29 years old, and he sees other guys like Trevor Lawrence, $55 million, Dak Prescott, $60 million. He's got to be thinking to himself, wait a minute, I'm better than all of these guys, and they're making like almost twice what I'm making.
Yeah, he's a bargain. And again, there's not many. It's hard to have middle-range quarterbacks in today's quarterback economy. You're either in that $50 million stage or you're way lower. So, no, I don't know that the Bucs want to give a guy with 2 years left on his contract the new deal, just because that sets a precedent for anybody that's exceeded their value, if you will. But a year from now, I think it makes a lot of sense to tear things up, assuming that he has a 25 that's anything like his 24. I think it makes a lot of sense, from a cap standpoint, from a stability standpoint. It's been a long time. I mean, I guess Jameis had 5 years as a starter here, but really not that many long-term quarterbacks in this franchise's history. And if Baker wants to have that and wants to do that, again, you want him to have the success he's having, but then you're going to have to pay him commensurate to that, probably a year from now.
Well, the longer you wait, the more money it will cost, as I always say here on the show, whether you're trying to build a stadium with the Rays or anything else, you're trying to buy a house, or in this case, Baker Mayfield's outdone it 2 years in a row. Now, if he does it 3 years in a row, Greg, a year from now, the numbers of the quarterbacks that keep going like this, way up. And the Bucs are probably going to have to pay more next year than they would have to pay this year. So it's a really interesting conversation, but I think it's one worth having.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it will not take much for him to be a $50 million quarterback, a $55 million quarterback a year from now. He's proven himself. I think it's much in terms of stats at 41 touchdowns and 4,500 yards as just him being the core and the face of this franchise and somebody that players have really bonded with. It's not an easy thing to take over a team from a Tom Brady, but he's done that. And, I think to do that when things around you are changing, when you're losing receivers to injury, when you're changing coordinators every year, he's been a really constant middle of that offense as a leader, as someone that the offensive line has galvanized around. And you want to keep that stability whenever you can.
What's your best guess on Chris Godwin? What do you think happens there?
I think he's a lot like Mike. I think this is all he's known in Tampa. His family loves Tampa. He got married here. He's got a baby here. They've trusted him to pay him well, coming off an injury before. I think they love what he brings to this team. It's hard to pay 2 receivers $20 million a year, as they'll be doing. There's a couple teams in the NFL that can do that. But no, I think it's leadership. For him to leave, I think someone's going to have to want to pay him, again, number one receiver money, $27, $28 million a year. I don't know that the Bucs need to come in that high. I think he wants to be here. I think he knows how well he likes Tampa. He likes this team. My guess is that he'll be back, and they'll be thrilled to have him back.
I agree. All right, before we let you go, big game Sunday, Chiefs, Eagles. Who do you like and why?
I think I like Philadelphia. To talk to the guys this week, I mean, it'd be a historic thing to see the Chiefs go three-peat and do that when no one's ever done it. But Philadelphia, you just think about what Barkley has done for them and how much he has taken over this postseason. Huge plays. It's one of those where it's really hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes or to think that someone's going to beat Patrick Mahomes. They've had such a amazing run of one-score games and not losing any of them. And I just think eventually it catches you. This defense is so far improved from the one we saw the Bucs dismantle in Tampa a year ago. I think Vic Fangio's done an amazing job. I think they've pieced in really young guys, 2 rookie corners. Zach Bond in the middle is probably one of the better stories in the NFL this year in terms of a guy going from just about nothing in New Orleans to 150 tackles and 5 forced fumbles, Pro Bowl, first team All-Pro. I really think this defense for Philadelphia can surprise people on Sunday, and I think the Eagles can pull it off.
Zach Bond's having an incredible year, a one-year prove-it type of deal, and now he's going to strike rich in free agency. We struck it rich by being on the same plane as Greg Auman flying into the Big Easy, and he's here on Radio Row. Always appreciate you, my friend. Keep doing what you're doing at foxsports.com.
Thanks, man. You guys have a good week. Enjoy the game on Sunday.
You do as well. Greg Auman, always great to catch up with him here live on Radio Row. Thomas Dimitroff coming up at 5:05. Would you rather? Cynthia Freeland in the 6 o'clock hour as well. When we come back, the Buccaneers may not be able to get Myles Garrett, but there are ways that they can improve their edge rusher needs. Pro Football Focus, an interesting mock draft. Who are the Buccaneers taking at 19? Oh, wait for it. That's coming up next here on The Drive, live on Radio Row. Stay with us.
You're tuned in to The Drive.
28 on your ride home. The Drive with yours truly. We are live on Radio Row here in New Orleans. Great to have you with us. Such a great scene. The buzz, the anticipation is starting to heighten as we get closer to Sunday. The Chiefs and the Eagles. Our thanks to Greg Auman. Really interesting Bucs and NFL conversation with Greg taking place here on the show. You can join us as well at 888-546-4620. Text at 82945. So a lot of news regarding the Buccaneers. Mike Greenberg, as we talked about yesterday, it broke toward the end of our show. He withdrew his name from consideration for the Jacksonville Jaguars general manager job. 15 years with Jason Light. He's loyal, okay? Loyalty means something to people who have a ton of integrity, with people who are obviously who approaches things in a dignified manner. And Mike Greenberg comes across as one of those guys. So he wasn't going to go up there and join that guy. Are you kidding me? He ain't going to go work with Liam Cohen. He knows what kind of a person Liam Cohen is, and he has shown his true colors over the last 3 weeks or so. So I thought it was a good move. And look, everyone wants to become a general manager. Everyone wants to become a head coach. It's really how you get there. And I think at some point, does Mike Greenberg want that job? Yes. He interviewed for the Jets job. He grew up a Jets fan, so I think that's a job that he did want. And it went to somebody else, Darren Muti, who got the job, who was an assistant in Denver as their GM. Now he's the Jets GM with Aaron Glenn being there. By the way, one of the other candidates who interviewed for the Jets and their general manager job, Thomas Dimitroff, the former Falcons GM, he's going to be with me coming up at the top of the hour. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm going to ask him about the interview process because apparently he went into the interview process and said, I want to move on from Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's what the Jets should do as well. So it's entirely possible that, Aaron Rodgers is going to be out there as a free agent, and there aren't many other free agent quarterbacks. And if there's a team out there that's willing to, tolerate or cope with everything that comes with an Aaron Rodgers, then maybe the Steelers, maybe the Raiders as a one-year stopgap, before they can find a more permanent guy at the quarterback position. I think those are the two places that would make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers. But we'll talk to Thomas Dimitroff coming up at the top of the hour, and we'll get his thoughts on him interviewing for that job, and we'll ask him about the Bucs, and we'll ask him about the Super Bowl as well. And Myles Garrett, who is here. When I walked in, I saw a massive group of people around this one guy. And listen, all these people that are here on Radio Row, they're coming with an entourage, all right? Myles Garrett had like 5-6 people around him. There are some people here on Radio Row. I saw Trey Hendrickson. He went on with Pat McAfee. They are surrounded by people. Cam Jordan was 25 feet to our right, and, we offered to get him on, and once he found out, I think, that we were from Tampa, I think he said thanks but no thanks, but that's okay. We're not hurt by it. Look, I'm willing to talk to everybody and anybody, okay, as long as it's, a great conversation, and, we've had some great conversations already here on Radio Row, and we'll continue to have many, many more. Thomas Dimitroff is coming up at the top of the hour. At 5:05, Cynthia Freeland in the 6 o'clock hour as well. We also have Would You Rather. So this morning, Pro Football Focus, you had the Senior Bowl last week. You had the practices, and then you had the Senior Bowl coverage and the game itself that took place. And, our friends over at PewterReport.com did, an incredible job in covering the Senior Bowl. So you can read all of their coverage there. But they also released a mock draft, which I thought was, very interesting coming out of the Senior Bowl. And I think Buccaneer fans might get really, really excited once they find out who they have the Buccaneers taking, in this mock draft. And it's a guy that, we had talked about here on the show because he had a viral moment that took place during the Senior Bowl week practices leading up to the game. And I'm talking about Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, who led FBS with 17 sacks this past season. So He's exactly the type of guy. It's a shade over 6'3" and about 250 pounds, and a great motor. Plays with some pretty good power to his game, as well as some bursts coming in off the edge. But with the 19th pick in this Pro Football Focus mock draft, they had the Buccaneers taking Mike Green, the edge defender from Marshall. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm like, okay, a lot of people are like, well, maybe he won't be there. We don't know that. It's early February. We still have the combine coming up. We have all these pro day workouts coming up and private workouts and interviews. So there are a lot of variables to consider when it comes to evaluating a prospect. And, the tail of the tape, pardon the pun, will be this kid's tape. And if you watch the tape, you're looking at a guy who had 17 sacks. So he certainly did something right. And he opened the eyes of NFL scouts, all over the country. And now he's an absolute first-round pick. And based on what he did last week at the Senior Bowl, a lot of people think he could go in the top 15. The Bucs pick at 19. We've seen Jason Light move up for some guys in the draft. We've seen him move down and pick some guys. Remember, he moved down to get Vita Vea when he allowed the Bills to trade up. I think it was from 12 to 7 to pick Josh Allen. The Bucs moved down. They got their guy in Vita Vea, and they were pretty happy with that pick as well. I think both teams were happy with that. They traded up for Tristan Wirfs once upon a time. They moved up one pick in the 2020 draft. They gave away a fourth rounder. Nobody cares about a fourth rounder, okay? Fourth rounders are nothing. They traded a fourth rounder. I remember this at the time, and some Bucs fans were upset when Gronk was lured out of retirement because Brady wanted him here. And Jason Light traded a fourth-round pick to get Gronk, and some Buccaneer fans were actually complaining. Why in the world would you give up a fourth-round pick to get? Are you complaining about that now? You won a Super Bowl. Gronk caught 2 touchdowns in that Super Bowl. Who the hell cares about a fourth-round pick? You traded a fourth-round pick to get Gronk, and you use a fourth-round pick to move up one spot to secure who I believe right now is the best offensive tackle in football, and that's Tristan Wirfs, an all-pro on the left side after he was an all-pro on the right side a couple of years ago. And that, in my book, would mean that, yeah, he's number one. I think he's the best tackle in football. And Jordan Mailata, a guy you're going to see on Sunday, is really good. Trent Williams is 37, and he's been injured the last year or so. I think Wirfs has taken that title from Tristan Wirfs. He has wrestled it away from Trent Williams. It's Tristan Wirfs wrestling, get it? The big wrestler back in the day in Iowa. He wrestled that distinction of being the best away from Trent Williams. And listen, in my opinion, Tristan Wirfs is number one. By the way, he might be here in New Orleans, and there's a chance that we could get Tristan Wirfs. Probably not today, maybe tomorrow into Friday. He's certainly a guy, one of the guys that we are targeting. We've been in touch with so many people. And there's also a possibility, Nick Wise is all over it, that Rob Gronkowski, we just talked about Gronk, maybe Gronk could be here tomorrow as well. Once he heard Tampa, he's like, oh, I'm all about Tampa. He loves Tampa. He loves us. So Gronk undoubtedly will make some time to come on with us. So we've got a lot of big-time guests that we're planning for tomorrow and Friday, and maybe even today. Look, Nick Wise is running around. He's trying to get this guy, that guy, the other guy. So we're going to effort in trying to bring you some of the very best interviews here from Radio Row, and we've already garnered a few, and we're going to get even a few more, too, as the time goes by. Nick Wise, do you have an update?
I embarrassed myself again.
What happened now? There's
this guy. I was coming back. I was trying to get a couple interviews from us, and I walk up. So David Montgomery from the Lions was running around here, and I didn't get to chat with him earlier. So I go up to this guy, and I go, dude, huge fan, love the Lions. He goes, you love the Lions? And I look at him, and I go, oh, my God, you're not David Montgomery.
Oh, no.
He hosts some podcast. They all laughed. I go, dude, you look exactly like David Montgomery. So if you want a David Montgomery lookalike, I got a connection. We can have him on.
Well, is it that guy over there? I don't think that I would want. Yes, thank you, Todd Bowles. I don't think I want like a guy who's going to win the David Montgomery lookalike contest.
He looks just like him. I mean, identical.
Slapdick prospect.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I'm burning bridges as we continue. All right.
You're doing a heck of a job today. Warren Sapp, David Montgomery
Hey,
lookalike.
Warren Sapp, it sounds like from everybody I've talked to, I'm just now officially part of the Tampa Bay community because
you're one of many. Trust me.
Has been nice to, or not nice to, a lot of people.
Warren has done that to a lot of people. He's done it to Rock Riley. He's done it to me. And now you're in the club. Welcome to the club. You're in the club.
All right, you do your show. I'm trying to find Rashad White. So
yes,
I'm going to go look around, see if I can find him. I haven't seen him yet. Or I'll try to find a guy that looks like Rashad White at the very
try
least.
not to
Jack Mayhofer.
Try not to insult anybody else here today.
I can't promise.
If we get Rashad White, that would be great. Greg Auman says he is here. He has been making the rounds, so we'll try and get Rashad White on the show. Maybe Tristan Wirfs and maybe Gronk. And tomorrow, there's a good chance we're going to get the new offensive coordinator of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Josh Grizzard. He will be introduced by the Buccaneers tomorrow at a press conference, and we will be efforting to get Josh Grizzard on the show tomorrow as well. That's one of the interviews that we are working on for you. 888-546-4620. Text at 82945. So I knew a lot of you would be so excited once I told you about this Pro Football Focus mock draft after the Senior Bowl, which has the Buccaneers taking Mike Green, the edge man, from the Marshall University Thundering Herd. Are they still called the Thundering Herd of Marshall? So he's a guy who turned some heads, obviously, last week at the Senior Bowl practices, and everyone fell in love with him. 17 sacks, yada, yada, yada. So Pro Football Focus has the Buccaneers taking him in their first mock draft following the Senior Bowl. So I would caution all of you who are getting excited that you're going to see about 12,000 more mock drafts between now and the draft. So I wouldn't be, too, banking on the fact that, he'll be there at 19 because with, workouts, he's one of those guys who'll probably go to a combine. He'll run like a 4.45 or something at 250 pounds. And he'll probably
say that again.
To the top 12 picks. Now, if the Buccaneers want him, they'll probably have to, go up and make a trade for him. So, we'll keep an eye on that situation for you because a lot certainly can change between now and the draft. Speaking of the draft is taking place in Green Bay this year. So the Green Bay Packers have their own setup on the far wall behind me here at Radio Row, as is San Francisco. The city of San Francisco is hosting next year's Super Bowl, and they've got their own setup right next to the Packers, right next to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So a lot of NFL teams are represented here on Radio Row, and, it's really an interesting thing happening here at Radio Row. So much going on. We're trying to get you the very best guests without Nick Wise maybe insulting anybody, and hopefully we'll get some more coming up in a matter of moments. We do know at the top of the hour, Thomas Dimitroff, former general manager in the NFL, will be here on the show. Cynthia Freeland a little bit later on. All right, great to have you with us. We're live here on Radio Row. More of your calls and texts coming up, 888-546-4620. Text at 82945 on the Bartow Ford DAE text platform where standard message and data rates do apply. More NFL news and notes coming up here on Radio Row, including a star player from the Philadelphia Eagles who missed practice today, missed media availability. Why? And it could be a very interesting storyline leading up to Sunday. We're going to get into that coming up next here on The Drive, live from the Big Easy.
You're tuned in to the
He's excited. He wishes he were out there, obviously, ahead of Super Bowl 59.
Yours truly is here. Nick Wise is running around. He's trying to get this guy, that guy. He had a conversation with Matthew Berry, of NBC, a guy that I've known for quite a while. So we're trying to, it's a fluid situation here, Chris Mathis. We're working with some people. Handlers are coming by all the time. Hey, are you interested in this person, that person? So it is a whirlwind here. It is so hectic. It's died down a little bit. Like when I walked in here, like an hour before the show, it was just bonkers in here.
And I want to say, Tom, I can tell, too, that it's starting to pick up there earlier, obviously, in the day. But, compared to Monday and Tuesday, I can hear crowd ambiance there right now, just a little bit. So that's how I know it's a little bit busier there today.
It is starting to pick up, which is exciting. I mean, we want to be right here in the middle of it all, and we are right here in the middle of it all. I mean, we have Fox Sports to our left, and then right in front of us, the NFL Network stage is in front of us here, and then Pat McAfee is over to our right, and the iHeartRadio setup is in front of us with people doing podcasts. Not Sterling Sharp. Shannon Sharp was doing a podcast earlier. So there's so many people walking around, and we're going to try and get you the very best interviews that we can possibly can. And coming up in about 10 minutes or so, Thomas Dimitroff, former NFL GM, will be with us here on the drive. The interview for the Jets general manager opening. There's certainly a lot of questions I have for him. He's going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on the big game. We'll get his thoughts on the Buccaneers, as well as Liam Cohen and his departure, and
Duval.
Stop it with that. All right, so we're a day closer to the big game, and there is a little bit of concern for the Philadelphia Eagles today because Jalen Carter missed his media availability because he was sick, or he is sick. So that's something that, we're going to keep a close eye on as we get closer to the big game on Sunday. But Jalen Carter not feeling well, apparently. And look, we talked about it with Greg Auman in the last hour. I mean, he is integral. And that guy is about as dominant as anybody is right now in the NFL. And you're probably seeing right now maybe the two best defensive tackles in this game here on Sunday. Chris Jones with the Chiefs, and then, of course, Jalen Carter on the other side has been dominating really this entire regular season down the stretch. He really started to pick it up, and now into the postseason. He had the big sack of Matthew Stafford in the snow to put that game away, in the wild card round. So it's certainly really interesting news coming in about Jalen Carter being sick. Look, it's Wednesday, so he's got a couple of days. I'm sure he's going to be fine for the game on Sunday, but it is something certainly to keep an eye on. I mean, what a player he is. By the way, that head slap that he executed in the NFC title game, which earned him a fine, by the way, that would have made Deacon Jones proud. Now, you can't be doing things like that in the NFL these days with all the head injuries and everything else, but that was one impressive head slap that he administered against the Washington.
Choke him out! Choke him!
Oh, man, his hands and his power, I mean, his quickness and agility, I mean, he's got the entire package. Now, personally, he's a difficult guy, certainly to get along with at times. He had a couple of character red flags when he came out of school. He's the kid from Apopka, as we all know, but I mean, there is no denying what kind of talent he is. He's one of the more dominating defensive linemen in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs will defend against him coming up on Sunday. I'm sure, look, if you try and block him with two guys, then you got Milton Williams, who has really turned it up, and he has been an impact player, and Jordan Davis and Josh Sweat coming in off the edge as a pass rusher. And they might get Brandon Graham back in this game here on Sunday. So Nolan Smith has also been very good. They're so deep, the Eagles are, along their defensive front. And one of the main reasons why they're here in the Super Bowl is because where does it all start? In the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. They have the best O-line/D-line pairings really in the NFL. It might be the very best when you combine the two. All right, 2 hours are in the books. Coming up, We're going to get a general manager's perspective into the Buccaneers and the offseason that they're having with Liam Cohen and Mike Greenberg staying here. So can the Buccaneers keep this going? And, you know, what is it like going into a general manager's interview in terms of, you know, laying out the foundation and your vision for what you see your said team looking like? We're going to talk to a guy who's been there and done that, former NFL GM, Thomas Dimitroff. He will join me coming up next here on The Drive.
You're tuned in to The Drive with
Gerald McCoy.
It's Wednesday from Indian Rocks Beach to Land O'Lakes and all around Tampa Bay, plus worldwide on iHeartRadio.
The gloves are off. I'm playing hardball. It's 4th and 15, and you're looking at a full court press.
You're tuned into the voice of the Tampa Bay sports fan.
You're going to like this guy. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us.
Buckle up, because you're on the drive with T-Kraz. Afternoons on 95.3 WDAE and AM 620.
3 of them could be Myles Garrett. It's worth it. To get a guy like that,
I agree.
with all the pieces you have in place, Tampa, if you're listening, I have a direct line to Levante David. I spoke to Levante yesterday. Everybody's wondering if one of the greatest Bucs, one of the greatest players to ever grace NFL field is coming back to finish his career in Tampa. I don't have the answer for you. But if they get Myles Garrett,
We'll finish that sentence. The answer is yes. Levante David would come back for another year. That was Gerald McCoy. He was on with me on Monday live here on Radio Row, and that's been a hot topic of conversation. Myles Garrett wants out. Obviously, the other 31 teams say, hey, we want in the Myles Garrett business. Welcome back. Good afternoon, Tampa Bay. Hour number 3. It is 5:03 on your ride home. The Drive with yours truly, Tom Krasnicki, presented by Moss Nissan. Great to have you with us. Nick Wise with me on site here as we are live on Radio Row in New Orleans as we count you down to the big game, the Super Bowl on Sunday. Chris Mathis back at our Rude Air and Water Studios. And joining me here, it is our pleasure and honor to talk to him face-to-face for once from Sumer Sports. Former NFL GM Thomas Dimitroff is with me here on Radio Row from one top to another. Welcome. Great to see you.
Tom, great to see you. And I'm mesmerized by your voice. You have one of the classic voices here, so keep it up, man.
I appreciate that very much. You know, when I get into an Uber, I'm like, they're like, where are you headed? Yeah, Convention Center. Like, you got a great voice, man. It's like, you never get tired of hearing about it.
That's right.
So, Myles Garrett, as a general manager, and the Browns are certainly in a tough spot, okay? They did not have a great year. They have not made very good decisions, obviously, with the quarterback decision with Deshaun Watson. I mean, you make a decision like that, that can set you back 5 years, and now your best player, a future Hall of Famer, wants out. So how should the Browns go about this?
So first of all, let me just paint the picture context. When you're a GM and you get that kind of news, initially you're like, the competitive is like, well, screw it, leave. And then you're like, I can't say screw it and leave in this situation. So how do we mend this, right? I'm sure Andrew Berry right now and Kevin Stefanski are putting their heads together trying to figure out, can we prevent this from happening? And the reality is it might be really tough to do so. And then you start thinking about the compensation, right? And we're talking about, what are we talking about? Potentially 2 1s and a 3-ish. I mean, that's legitimate. The financial situation and such is big. So for Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns, I think what they have to do is understand that this move, which doesn't normally happen, maybe they go and knock on the doors of a number of teams. They right now are looking at it thinking, I don't want to get the 25th, 6th, 7th pick. I want to get early picks. If there are 2 1s, what organization would be out there that would be willing to do that? Here's my thought on it very quickly, too, is if you're a team that has a quarterback and you don't need 2 first-round picks, so to speak, like Washington, I could see them doing something like that, right? It's a tough deal to be doling out a couple picks, a couple first-round picks for the future, though he's such a difference maker.
He sure is, and he makes everyone around him better. You would know that, obviously, better than anybody. And one of the teams that fits that criteria that you just talked about, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their number one need is an edge rusher. They've got Baker Mayfield, 29 years old. They have found their franchise quarterback after Tom Brady's retirement. They pick number 19, so they don't have a really high pick. They're right there, kind of like in the middle of the first round. So your thoughts on the Buccaneers maybe being interested?
Well, I could see, I mean, you just led right into that because that is one of the other teams that I'm thinking about. And I think Jason Light has a really good understanding of the trenches. That's my thought. And I have a great deal of respect for him. I think he goes in there and he knows that this would be a legit type of move that could set that team up for years to come. To your point with Baker Mayfield, I mean, so no one there in Tampa is thinking Baker's just kind of turned the corner and he's fine sort of just for a 1 year. That's a belief that he's there for a number of years, right? He's found his groove, correct?
100%. Yeah. So 1-year prove-it deal, knocked it out of the park, and the Bucs said, okay, let's see if you could do it again. He did it again, 3 years, $100 million. And now with 2 years left to go in that deal, you look around the quarterback landscape, he's making 30 next year and then 40 the year after that. Baker Mayfield's now done it 2 years in a row, and he just had the best year of his career. I don't think he's going to be marching into Jason Light's office and say, hey, I think we need to talk about my contract. But at some point, look, there are guys making $55 to $60 million that Baker's looking at, like Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott. He goes, I'm better than those guys, right?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. That. I do love, though, the fact that, again, Jason and company, right, being in that right area and not thinking about the $65+ million. I know there's only one probably that can claim that right now. I like where they're at, of course, and I think this might be a good situation for them, again, without beating that point to death.
Thomas Dimitroff is with me, former NFL GM, courtesy of Sumer Sports. So, Jason, and I know Jason really well, he values his draft pick. So, but in the case of Myles Garrett, you would make an exception, wouldn't you?
I would consider making an exception. All I would love to do is I'd really love to dig in there with the staff, and that's what you do as a general manager. You know, Jason's going to get there with his trusted confidants, and they're going to drill down, as well as the coach, and figure out how much is left, sort of tread on the tire with a guy like this. That's a big thing. Like, how many years is that? And there are times when you hit on that and everything is great, and then there are other times you invest something like that, and all of a sudden, a year or two later, there's a little bit of a wah moment, which is tough. So where do you gauge? The other thing is, it is imperative to sit down with your owner and talk about true expectations, right? Is it expected that this guy's going to have double-digit sacks every year moving forward? Does he have to have 15 or 16 or whatever? Or what if he has some of these years that are 6.5 or 7 sacks? Are you okay? Is that a hit? My biggest thing with ownership, I used to do this with Arthur, like, please tell me what your expectations are on a hit. Not that you have to determine this, that's not your background, but if you have an owner that has these high expectations, you don't hit on that. And, what is the fan base? I mean, as a GM, you don't want to worry about that, but you have to take that into consideration.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was my next question, just to give the fans an insight, because you've been there and done that as a former GM in this league. When you're trying to make a big decision of this magnitude, you've got to get your staff, your front office, and, of course, ownership involved on every single level. You're getting a lot of different people involved, because it is a big decision. You have to make a decision. Do we go after this guy? Do we give up the compensation? Plus, and I know Myles Garrett didn't mention it, he's going to want a new contract. That's probably going to pay him $35 to $40 million a year, right?
He's going to want a new contract. And this comes back to what you just said. You make sure that you are, as a GM, and Jason's very good with this. You know that. He will accommodate the thoughts and the feelings of management, of course, as a head coach. If you're the defensive guy, and defensive meaning like someone brings something to you as a GM and you're like, yeah, I got that. There's nothing worse than that, especially when an owner comes in and they want to express their opinion. You need to listen. And one thing I learned, by the way, what you don't need to do is shoot back. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. You need to say, oh, that's a very interesting situation. Let me think about it. You come back tomorrow and you say, no, I'm not feeling it. And the owner is good with that, because that's why the GM's being paid. But you can't disconnect with the owner and push away automatically in something like this. This takes a lot of thought. This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. Thomas Dimitroff is with me here on The Drive, WDAE in Tampa Bay. We're live here on Radio Row. So I want to get your thoughts, and I'm sure you've seen it, you've read about it, and I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like what the Buccaneers just experienced with Liam Cohen. Obviously, top 5 in every statistical category. He did a great job, especially in the run game. Jacksonville comes calling. The Buccaneers approached him and said, name your price. And this is how it went down, by the way. Name your price. He named his price. There was no negotiation. 3 years, we'll make you the highest paid coordinator. Then all of a sudden, the Trent Baalke situation, and, you can speak to that as well. It's such a complicated issue that, Liam Cohen says, maybe I'm having second thoughts. They fired the GM. I did not want to work with that GM. And now he takes a secret meeting up to Have you ever seen anything like this, the way it went down?
No, this was interesting to watch how this happened. But I just feel like the league is changing in certain ways. And I'm a big believer in adaptability and agility, right? As much as we don't like it. I was talking to my old head coach here, Mike Smithy, a little bit earlier, and we were reminiscing about where it was and how it is. It's different now, right? There's a lot. I was experiencing it, by the way, not to get off on this, but I was interviewing the New York Jets job, right? They had 20-plus individuals interviewing for the GM job and 20-plus on the head coaching job, meaning it's all about pairing now. It's all about a chess match now in that situation. And as much as the fan base can get upset with it, and there's a lot of elements that way, it is the way it is. I know that sounds like you have to have a little bit of, I call it driftwood to you as a management. I mean, I'm sure it agitated the heck out of, Jason, right? I'm sure, I don't know, were they coming out and talking about it? And yet you have to be open to that. And just happening in today's world, it's the way it is. And there's fine lines that people are trying to figure out. I think Liam Cohen is very good, and I think he's going to do very well there. You guys don't want to hear that as well, because he named his price. I didn't realize that. Is that what you said?
Well, he named his price in terms of the Bucs said, what would it take for you to stay? He named his price. Boom. I think we could do that. It's done. Highest paid coordinator, like in the history of the game. And you know this, obviously, 32 general manager jobs, 32 head coaching jobs. It was probably $4.5 to $5 million. And when somebody waves $12 million a year for 5 years, which is what we think Liam Cohen got from Jacksonville, I mean, that's hard to turn down. It's the process in which he went about it. He lied to the Bucs, and then he ghosted them, and then he took a secret trip. And I think it's water under the bridge, although he tried to take a couple of their coaches, and the Buccaneers denied him because it was a lateral move, right? You can do that.
Yeah, the lateral move thing. Well, I guess in the end, the last point I'd make on it is, again, being able to follow this and know that, okay, we see that happens now. I just feel like more of this is going to happen. I don't feel like this is a one-time deal. I think it's going to start happening a lot more. Not for long league, big money involved. I feel it. I hear the discussions around coaching, and I hear the discussion around management. And it is about what can I get? What is the best situation for me ultimately? And I know it's tough on the organizations. It's complicated.
Former NFL GM Thomas Dimitroff is with me here on the drive. So you just made mention of it. I want to ask you about this. The Jets were my team growing up, and you interviewed for the general manager job back in December. And when you go into an interview, you're trying to lay out your vision of what the Jets were going to look like. So without getting into some specifics, and, you've said some things about Aaron Rodgers, about how you thought you would probably pivot off him, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, that was one of the things, is a really important point to come in and have a strong opinion about. I spent a lot of time preparing for that interview, spent a lot of time looking at the video, of course, of a guy like Aaron Rodgers. He can still play categorically, in my mind. I'm not saying there's not decline there. I think he's one of the best who have played in this. I think he still goes to another team, keyword, another team, and potentially wins for a couple more years. What he can do when you watch him he can still make plays. He can throw off bounce, off camber. He can, of course, he's not throwing downfield like he used to, but maybe with another team, I think he goes in there. He helps a young guy come along. I just personally think moving on from the Jets, given the other stuff involved, is a fresh start for an organization that needs a fresh start. Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn need to go in there as first-time GM and head coach, similar to what we did, not to bring up Atlanta many years ago. It was a mess coming off the Michael Vick debacle. Different but similar. It's tough. The number one thing you need to do is turn that organization's respect factor around, and you can do that within 6 to 8 months, where players want to play there, coaches want to coach there, and management want to work there. That's what that organization needs, in my opinion, and that comes with, of course, building the right team.
Speaking of building the right team, the Kansas City Chiefs have done that. Brett Veach is one of the best GMs in football, and it was interesting to hear Patrick Mahomes say yesterday that the loss to Brady and the Buccaneers still haunts him from a couple of years ago down in Tampa. And right after that game, the Chiefs' O-line was decimated, and he went out and he made the moves. Creed Humphrey drafting him and signing Joe Tooney, who's not playing left tackle. But give me your thoughts on the X factor for this game here on Sunday.
Yeah, look, I think, it's funny. The company I work for, Sumer Sports, we have a Sumer AI brain. The Sumer AI brain would say the Philadelphia Eagles, statistically and data related, have the edge. I think it's going to be I don't even know if you're asking me to prognosticate. Is that the right word? Gosh, I can't even say that word. But the fact that I think it's going to be a very close game, I think it's going to be a 3-point differential. And I just think there's something edgy enough about where Philadelphia is right now that is going to bring them very close to taking it, taking the game. Understanding the X factor is Patrick Mahomes. How is this defense, the number one defense, going to respond to him? And I think this might be the year that they are able to do that. And again, Howie Roseman, he's got a long memory, and he'll hear somehow, because he's got this mobster element to him, I say that lovingly, where he's going to hear whether Thomas said something against the team or not. He's a good friend of mine. I laugh all the time. But, look, I think it's going to be a close one, and I just feel like the edge is to Philly in my mind.
All right, tell me about Sumer Sports before we let you go. You just made mention of it, analytics-driven, and how can people check it out?
Yeah, sumersports.com, SUMER sports.com. It is a roster optimization platform, and what we are is a combination of subjective and objective. We have 25 former NFL people in there, 5 former general managers, as well as 40-plus data scientists and engineers. It's a really good merging of the intelligentsia in the world and the really strong football minds. And our B2B is to the NFL, working with the NFL, as well as the NCAA with Portal and NIL. It's in my mind, it's blowing up. We started with 3. We're 75 people strong, and I'm excited where we're going with it.
SUMER, sumersports.com. He's Thomas Dimitroff, former Falcons GM. Always great catching up with you.
Thanks.
Pleasure meeting you in person finally.
Fantastic. Love it. Anytime, let me know. I'm around. I'm up in Atlanta. I'm always there for you.
You got it, Tom.
Okay, guys.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thomas Dimitroff. Great stuff out of him. Great insight into how these decisions are made at the general manager position. Just incredible stuff happening here on Radio Row. 888-546-4620. Text at 82945. Really interesting insight. So when it comes down to making a decision, okay, we got this player available, Myles Garrett, and he talked about the Buccaneers fitting that criteria, and I agree with him. If you've got a quarterback, you don't think you're going to be using a first-round pick on a quarterback, you're close to contending. Look, the Buccaneers have made the playoffs now, 5 consecutive years, 4 straight division titles. The Buccaneers fit the criteria. They've got Baker Mayfield. He is hands down, without question, their leader, their franchise quarterback at this point. And Jason Light loves his draft picks, I know. But if there's any chance whatsoever that you can pull this off, and obviously the Glazers will sign off on that. Thomas made mention of it. You've got to get ownership involved. They've got to know what's going on, because not only are you going to trade significant assets to try and get this guy, and even though Myles Garrett hasn't come out and said it, you got to sign him. $35 to $40 million a year. That's what it's going to take on a 4 or 5 year deal. Now, he's getting toward the end of 30, and I thought Dimitroff really broke it down pretty precisely. It's like, okay, if we give this guy 4 years at, let's just say, $40 million a year, because I think he's going to break the mold. I think Nick Bosa's at $34 million a year. You know, all right, if you get to 35 or 35, 70, let's go like a 4-year, $140 million deal, and you're going to probably guarantee probably 90 to 100 million. It's a lot of money. And ownership is going to have to sign off on that. And, you know, the scouting department and the GM is going to have to sign off on the draft pick and or player compensation that it's going to take in order to make that deal work. So it's a really fascinating conversation, and that's why, you know, we wanted Thomas Dimitroff on the show, and, you know, he interviewed with the Jets, and, you know, he made mention of it. Look, you know, I wasn't in there with that interview, and I said, I don't want Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback. And look, that's what you're supposed to do. You go in an interview, if you're wanting to be the general manager of that said team, you have to lay out the vision of what you think that team's going to look like. And he went in there and said, hey, Aaron Rodgers, you know, I think he can still play, but my vision is that guy's not my quarterback. And apparently a lot of people who interviewed for the Jets GM job went in there and said the same thing. I don't see Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback. I don't know what Darren Maugese said. He's the new GM. We're going to find out. You know, Aaron Glenn's like, you know, we need to have a conversation. The way Aaron Glenn was talking, and you can tell a lot about not how something is, not why it's said or how it was said. Aaron Glenn seemed like, yeah, we're going to talk about it with that guy. But I don't think he seems gung-ho on the idea of having Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. I think he wants to start fresh. He wants to do things his way, and we'll see what he ends up doing. But that is their problem. I really thought Thomas Dimitroff really broke it down in a very, very succinct way, in a very detailed way as to how these decisions are made, really from, the front office all the way up to ownership, coaching staff. There are so many people that are involved. It's a layered conversation when you talk about training for a guy like Myles Garrett. On the text platform, out of the 708, Myles Garrett make more than Baker? Now he does not. He's got 2 years left at around $45 million on his deal. But his next contract, if the Buccaneers don't give Baker another deal, I think his next contract, he'll be making more than Baker Mayfield. And honestly, Baker should be in that $55 million a year range. He's making 30 this year. We had Greg Auman on earlier today, and look, Baker's not going to walk out or do anything like that. I think he's very grateful that the Buccaneers gave him this opportunity. But now he's hit it out of the park 2 straight years. Now what do you do? Because at some point, you got to pay this guy close to market value. And right now, he's making way less than that. All right, we're live here on Radio Row, where it's such a great atmosphere here. It's a Wednesday. The game is coming right around the corner. 888-546-4620. Text at 82945 on the Bartow Ford DA text platform. Your calls and texts are right around the corner. Also, coming up in the next hour, Cynthia Freeland will join us live here on site from the NFL Network. They are set up, by the way, right across from us. They are right next to us here on Radio Row, or they call it Media Row. I call it Radio Row. It's just semantics at this point. But when we come back, we're going to play a very interesting game. I know Chris Mathis has got something up his sleeve. It is another edition of Would You Rather. Would you rather see, Baker Mayfield sign his long-term deal, or would you rather have Chris Godwin back on a long-term deal? Would you rather? Coming up next, this is The Drive live from Radio Row. We're coming back.
You're tuned in to The Drive with T-Craz.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live here on Radio Row. Chris Mathis is back at our Rude Air and Water Studios. And speaking of air and water, guess what? My guys and the certified Rude Pro partners, and they know an awful lot about, keeping your indoor air comfortable, because they do it a lot. And now courtesy of my guys over at Rude, that you can rely on them to make sure that the hot water is flowing whenever you need it. They provide you access to one of the top orthopedic programs in the nation. Schedule an appointment today at FloridaOrtho.com. And here he is back at our Rude Air and Water Studios, the most wanted man on Bourbon Street, as I found out this week, Chris Mathis.
And why do you think I stayed put here at the station, making sure everything was taken care of with the board and all the features?
Well, look,
that's exactly why, Tom.
Yeah, you're doing a heck of a job, buddy.
Well, we'll get right to it. We just spoke with Thomas Dimitroff, former NFL general manager. Tom, the question is, would you rather be an NFL general manager or a head coach in today's NFL?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I would rather be GM. And the reason why is, I mean, you're sitting above everyone else. You get to evaluate the team. You get to make draft picks and trades and sign contracts. And, I think that would be a really interesting challenge. And obviously, the guys who do it about as well as anybody. I mean, just look at the 3 GMs we have here in the Tampa Bay area. Jason Light, Julian Brisbois, and Eric Neander. I mean, they do incredible work, and they devote a lot of time and effort and preparation into it. And they're really good at what they do because they put everything that they have into those jobs. So I just think the day by day, coaching and the long hours and everything else, and you got to deal with players and everything that comes with that. I think I would rather be a GM than a head coach.
I want one of those cigars.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you might get one, Jason Light, if you're able to pull this one off and make a trade for Myles Garrett. Tom, would you rather the Bucs save those draft picks and pass on Myles Garrett, or give up 3 top-tier draft picks over the next 2 seasons to land a Myles Garrett?
Now, when you say 3 top-tier picks, are you?
That's 2 firsts and a second.
Oh,
how about that?
2 firsts and a second. I probably would not do that. When you consider, and look, I would say that because of the Buccaneers' ability to draft. I mean, if you're talking about, and I know it's the Browns looking to trade Myles Garrett, but, when you're talking about teams that don't really draft well and they continue to blow picks year after year after year, I think that would, probably lead you to believe that, we're not good at the drafting. So, yeah, let's go ahead and trade these picks and see if we can get, a guy, a proven commodity, as opposed to trying to take a shot in the dark 50-50. And that's what it is, right? It's a flip of a coin on a first-round pick, and it's even less than that. The curve is less than that when you're talking about drafting a quarterback. So the Bucs are really good. Jason Light is really good at what he does, which is drafting, and he has shown that the last couple of years. So I'm going to say no. I would not do 2 1s and a 2 for Myles Garrett and then have to pay him $40 million a year.
There's a pair of former play callers here in Tampa Bay. One that is absolutely hated right now by the Buccaneer fans.
Duval.
And then one that, we're like, how did he get that head coaching job? We wish him the best of luck.
Yeah, rough one, right?
Well, year 1 maybe, Coach, but let's see how it goes in year 2. So here's my question for you, T. Kraz. Over the next 4 years, would you rather be Dave Canales or Liam Cohen?
Oh, good one. I would rather be Dave Canales. And the reason why is, and I know he got up to a rough start in Carolina, but he figured it out. And the more time you spent with Dave Canales and had him on the show and had a chance to talk to him a little bit before he made the move to Carolina, he is a leader of men. I don't know if you can say the same about Liam Cohen based on his recent behavior, and I think his true self and his true personality, I think, came to the surface. I'm very confident in that Dave Canales is a leader of men. You need to be a CEO type to be a head coach in the NFL, and I do believe he has those leadership qualities. I think he's better at being a head coach than he is being an offensive coordinator, a first-time play caller. His predictability was certainly called into question when he was here with the Bucs. But in terms of him being a head coach, he completely turned Bryce Young around. So I'm optimistic, much more optimistic about Dave Canales and what he's able to do as head coach than I am with Liam Cohen.
I'm right there with you. I think you made the right pick there, Tom. But the next one, I mean, your life may depend on it. Would you rather step into a ring with Muhammad Ali in his prime for 1 round or line up against Derrick Henry for 3 reps in a tackling drill?
What?
Yep, pick one.
Are you crazy? I mean,
pick one, man. Come on.
1 round with Muhammad Ali
in his prime.
Yep. Or 3 reps against Derrick Henry.
Yeah, 3 where he's running at you and you're going to tackle him 3 different plays.
Like me and him, like a one-on-one?
Yeah, one-on-one. Yep.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, come on, man. Let's go.
There's no way that's happening.
You're out in New Orleans picking one. I need you to pick one right here.
He's going to annihilate me. Muhammad Ali in 1 round, he'll annihilate me in 15 seconds.
Pick your poison.
You know what? I think I'll step in the ring with Muhammad Ali.
Wow. Okay.
And
you're not. What are you gonna do?
Dude, you know what? He hits me with just 1 jab. I'll just go down. That's it.
Oh, fair.
That's what people were doing. You know, when they fought Mike Tyson. Tyson was knocking dudes out in 10 seconds. That's because, you know, you want to collect that big 7-figure paycheck and you want to be able to count your money and be able to know what your wife's name is and what day of the week it is.
And still be able to count your blessings, too, because your mental's there also, Tom.
Yes, all of that is under consideration. So I'll step in the ring with Muhammad Ali and float like a butterfinger. You know, he hits me 1 jab, I'll just go down. That's it. I'm down for the count.
You'll play possum just like Michael Vick used to do, speaking of Thomas Dimitroff back in the day when he would go head-to-head with Warren Sapp, a guy who Nick Wise has now familiarized himself with as of today. We'll continue here. T-Kraz live at Radio Row alongside Nick Wise as well. I'm back here at the studio. Would you rather this year's Super Bowl MVP be Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts? And this is not who's going to get it. This is who would you rather see at the end of the day.
Well, at the end of the day, I think I would rather see Patrick Mahomes win.
Oh, so what's the question?
The question here, Tommy Boy, is, you know, if that happens, that means, you know, the Chiefs are winning, and that means Patrick Mahomes belongs in the same category as you in terms of being the greatest of all time. So it would be a wonderful story to have Jalen Hurts win it, certainly, because I thought 2 years ago he outplayed Patrick Mahomes and he lost, and he wasn't named the MVP. This time around, you know, if he beats Patrick Mahomes, he will undoubtedly be the MVP. Or it could be Saquon Barkley, though. You know, this is usually like a quarterback award, and Craig Mutlow from Caesars mentioned that before, and I agree with him. But Saquon Barkley could pop for 150 to 200 yards, and he could very well be named the most valuable player of Sunday's big game. But Patrick Mahomes wins it. You're talking about a three-peat. He wins the MVP. Then you're talking about him being in another stratosphere of greatness where there's only one other guy right there with him, and that would be Tom Brady. So I don't hate Patrick Mahomes at all. I respect him. I like him. I admire his play. I think he's fantastic, and I think he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats, and I think that would be the better story, believe it or not.
All right, let's talk about another great story here surrounding Sunday's game, Super Bowl 59. Would you rather, T-Kraz, as someone watching the game, rather have great commercials during the entire program or a phenomenal halftime show put on by Kung Fu Kenny?
Who?
Kung Fu Kenny, Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, I don't even
Humble, you know, All the Stars, Love. Those are some of his top songs. You better familiarize with it, Tom.
Yeah, whatever, dude. I don't know this guy, you know, from Adam, but yes, he is doing the halftime show, and I'm not big into the commercials. You know, there are people who watch a Super Bowl. You can't wait to see the commercials. What the hell are you watching the game for? Who the hell watches like a show? I can't wait until the commercial break. Nobody does that. So, and I'm not a Kendrick Lamar fan. I mean, could I just pick option C and like go to sleep for a half an hour?
So you'd rather sleep throughout the entire Super Bowl? You could, if you want to choose that one, you could
sleep throughout the entire Super Bowl. I don't care for the commercials, and I don't care for the halftime act.
Well, pick one, Tom. Come on, man. You're sitting on the fence.
But listen, I'll pick the commercials, if anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kendrick Lamar doesn't do anything for me.
Not a fan. Hey, you know what? Kendrick Lamar has a song with Tay-Tay. Maybe she'll make an appearance. You might wake up then, Tom. We'll continue with one final one here. Would you rather see a blowout for the team that you hope or expect to win, if that goes hand in hand, or a close but entertaining Super Bowl and the team you pick want to win loses?
I'll pick the entertaining Super Bowl. And even if I don't get it right, I just want to see a great Super Bowl, an entertaining Super Bowl, a very close game. Nobody wants to see a blowout. Nobody wants to see, Bears, Patriots, for example, 46-10. I mean, nobody's in the mood to see that.
Not at this time.
Not at this time, not at any time, Todd Bowles. So I don't care if I get the winner right or wrong. That doesn't matter as much. What does matter is a very entertaining game, an amazing game, and I think we're going to get that on Sunday.
And there you have it. That's Would You Rather this week, Radio Row in New Orleans.
Thank you, Chris Mathis. And it's Would You Rather presented by our friends over at Tampa General Hospital in partnership with the Florida Orthopedic Institute. 888-546-4620. You guys can certainly opine and react. Text at 82945. Out of the 703, you get a helmet versus Derrick Henry. Give me 10 rounds against Henry. Ali can kill you with one punch. He certainly can. All right. I'm just saying, look, he hits me with a jab. I'm just going down. Derrick Henry, you against Derrick Henry at 6'2", 250, running in the 4.4s, 4.5s? I don't think so, buddy. 3 reps against him. He runs you over 3 times, dude, and you're dead. So I don't think I've got any sort of motivation or desire to see Derrick Henry one-on-one in the open field. Muhammad Ali, I'll take my chances, and he'll hit me, and I go down, and that'll be the end of the story and end of the fight too, for that matter. It might be the end of the fight. Choke him. All right, we'll take a timeout. On the other side, we're going to let you know what's on tonight, plus the latest from Radio Row here in the Super Bowl and the buzz surrounding the game on Sunday and one player not feeling great. We're going to get into that as well next here on The Drive, live from Radio Row.
WDAE traffic.
Tampa Bay. We will continue here with our coverage live at Radio Row throughout this entire week. If you missed any of our interviews, not only from today, but throughout the week as well, they're all available for streaming via podcast on the iHeartRadio app. Download that app, search up The Drive, and make sure to make us a preset as well. You'll absolutely not regret it. Now, I do have one college basketball game I do want to make mention of. Number 4, Tennessee will host number 15, Missouri at 7 o'clock tonight. That one is worth watching. That is simply what's on tonight. Thank you all for listening to The Drive this afternoon.
You are great, Chris Mathis. Tremendous job out of you, buddy. 888-5.
I'm not leaving.
4620.
Hey, you're the guy, top 25 show in the nation, man.
Well, listen, I don't know how official any of these rankings are, but our friends over at Barrett Sports Media, they do a tremendous job with this each and every year. They have a whole bunch of panelists from across the country, program directors and whatnot, who, put this list together. And, we were honored to be recognized in the top 25 of afternoon sports radio shows in the country. So we are truly blessed. We've got one more hour to go. We've got a huge final hour of the show with Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network. She's going to be with us here on Scene. We saw Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network that getting ready to do that Insiders show, because the NFL Network set is literally right across the way from us, about, 100 feet away from us here, from our vantage point and our setup here on Radio Row as we get you set for the big game, the Super Bowl. Now, a little bit of news today regarding Jalen Carter, one of the more dominant defensive players in football. He is dealing with an illness. He missed today's media availability. The Eagles have not yet released their practice report for this afternoon, and we'll find out if he's on there, if he was limited in any sort of way. Now, look, I don't think this is a big deal. I think he's going to play. It's an illness on a Wednesday. If we're talking about a Friday or a Saturday, something a little bit closer to the Super Bowl, that might yield some sort of concern, but I don't think this is anything to, get worked up about. I think Jalen Carter is going to be fine, and he is absolutely going to be an integral figure for that game here on Sunday. So, speaking of defensive lines, Buccaneers have a new defensive line coach, Charlie Strong, a very familiar name to Tampa Bay, to the state of Florida, coaching with the Gators, coaching with USF. And, he's made the rounds. He's coached with the Dolphins, the Jaguars. I mean, last year he was at Alabama. He is now the new defensive line coach, 64 years old. And he takes over for Casey Rogers, who left the Buccaneers to become the D-line coach with Dan Campbell and those Detroit Lions. So Charlie Strong is here in Tampa Bay, a wealth of coaching experience. So an interesting move by the Buccaneers, who, by the way, tomorrow will introduce their new offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator. Josh Grizzard gets the bump up, right? He gets a promotion. He is the guy. He'll be introduced at a press conference tomorrow at 12:30. We will have him on here on The Drive tomorrow at some point. It might be right at the top of the show. We'll find out. We're just trying to work out the details with the Buccaneers to get on the new offensive coordinator of your Buccaneers, Josh Grizzard. It'll be our honor to talk to that guy. I got a lot of questions for him in terms of how the third down situation looked as a passing game coordinator. That was his main area of focus with the Buccaneers as their passing game coordinator. What did that look like each and every week? How were they able to get better? Not only get better, they were the best in the NFL on third downs, converting more than 50% of the time. And Baker Mayfield certainly is a huge part of that with his playmaking ability, not just the schedule calls and audibles, but, when the play breaks down, it's the off-script plays where he gets out and he tucks the ball away. How many times did Baker Mayfield scramble for a first down when his first or his second read wasn't there? So I got a lot of questions for Josh Grizzard. He's going to have the answers. The guy knows what he's doing. He's a pro. He's an Ivy League graduate. Dude went to Yale. He's very smart. I'm not. A lot of people, remind me of that each and every day, including some of you on the text platforms. It'll be an Ivy League guy talking to a guy who graduated from the College of Staten Island. Could you have two further extremes in terms of education and the level of education and the quality of education. I thought I did okay for myself, but you're talking about a guy in Josh Grizzard who is an Ivy League guy, and he will join us in all likelihood tomorrow on the show. There are some rumors that Tristan Wirfs is going to be here at some point, and maybe we'll get him on Radio Row. And Rashad White apparently was making the rounds. We're trying to get him too. So there's a slew of guests that we're in the running for. Gronk might be here tomorrow. So tomorrow and Friday are going to be absolutely off the chain. All right, 3 hours are in the books. One more exciting hour coming up live here on Radio Row. One more hour to go here on the program. Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network will join us. We'll get an analytics perspective. We'll check out some of her projections for the big game here on Sunday. Of course, she joined us each and every week talking fantasy football with us. So it'll be an honor to get her with her face-to-face in person here live on Radio Row. Plus, the rumblings here from the Super Bowl, including Patrick Mahomes making a really interesting statement regarding the Buccaneers. That is next here. This is The Drive live from Radio Row. Stay with us.
You're tuned in to
football field at Raymond James Stadium. Shaq Barrett and Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, they were all chasing Patrick Mahomes, took turns in chasing him and hitting him and sacking him. It was an incredible effort by the Buccaneers defensively, and that's the one game that still haunts Patrick Mahomes to this day. He made those comments right here at the site of Super Bowl 59. Good evening, Tampa Bay. Welcome back. It is the fourth and final hour of the drive with yours truly, T. Kraz, Tom Krasnicki. 6:06 on your ride home on this beautiful Would You Rather Wednesday. We are live here on Radio Row at the Convention Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, where we have been all week long, presented by our guys over at Moss Nissan. Certainly appreciate their support and sponsorship for helping us get to New Orleans. Nick Wise is here, insulting people left and right, and he did it a couple of times today, and he's doing a great job.
No. You insulted him a little
I'm not
bit.
insulting anybody. I'm just, we're having a good time here, Chris Mathis. He had a, run in or two with a couple of people. It's okay. It happens.
Who's next? I wonder who's next. Could it be a Mike Florio tomorrow? I don't know. We hope to have Mike Florio on the show tomorrow. We're working on so many big guests tomorrow and into Friday. Mike Florio, Derek Brooks, Booger McFarland, Rob Gronkowski. I mean, there's so many people. Matthew Berry from the fantasy expert over at NBC Sports. What about Ross Tucker? Any update on him?
No, Ross is out of here by 1 o'clock, so he's not able to join us, unfortunately. Oof is right. But listen, we've got so many other people. Also tomorrow, Josh Grizzard is not here on Radio Row, but he'll be introduced as the next offensive coordinator of your Buccaneers, as Stephen A. Smith just walked by, like he owns the place. But Josh Grizzard will be introduced tomorrow, and he'll be on with us here on the drive at some point tomorrow after he's introduced. So we'll look forward to getting him on. Tristan Wirfs, rumor has it that he is going to be here on Radio Row. Rashad White is here. So we're efforting so many guys. Adam Shine, Chris Mad Dog Russo. So we're going to try and get some of these guys, and we have reached out to all of them, and hopefully we'll be able to snag a few of these people. Watch them all show up at the same time. That's going to be our dilemma tomorrow. Like everyone shows up at the same time, like, okay, I'm ready for you. Okay, so there's like 3 people here, waiting to come on. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah, not going to get into that at all.
Listen, if Shane Boz wants to come on down, he's more welcome to do so. 888-546-4620. Text at 82945 on the Bartow Ford DAE text platform. Where standard message and data rates do apply there. Cynthia Freeland will be here. She will be here at 6:30 at the bottom of the hour. So we can't wait to get with Cynthia, analytics expert, very smart, beauty and brains, went to Northwestern, does a lot of fantasy, obviously, for the NFL Network, does her projections. So we'll talk to her about the buzz surrounding the big game on Sunday and whether or not Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs can pull off the three-peat. Mahomes, snap answer, yeah, the game against the Buccaneers, that was my low moment. And look, he's had a couple of them. By the way, Brady was on the opposite side. Brady threw 3 touchdowns in that Super Bowl where the Buccaneers thumped the Chiefs 31-9, and Mahomes is getting chased around the field. He hurt his foot that day. The offensive line stunk for Kansas City. That's why they went out and they made a concerted effort to sign Joe Thuney, to draft Trey Smith and also Creed Humphrey. And they totally reformed that offensive line. And now that looks like it's, a real stable portion of that team. Even with their left tackle situation not ideal, Joe Thuney's like, you know what? I'm an all-pro guard. You need me to go to left tackle, I'll do it. And Joe Thuney has now been playing left tackle for the last few games, and he's been really good at it. And that just goes to show you what a terrific player, what a terrific old lineman he is. And as we saw with Tristan Wirfs, it's not easy to change positions. I mean, to go from guard to left tackle is hard. To go from right tackle to left tackle is also very difficult. But, the gifted players in this league can pull it off. When you're as physically athletic and gifted as a guy like Tristan Wirfs, he's able to make it work. He's a special player. Not everybody can do it. Joe Thuney, if he's able to win on Sunday, guess what? That would make it 5 championships for Joe Thuney since he's been in the league. He had a couple with the Chiefs. He had a couple with the New England Patriots. If he can win on Sunday, that would make it 5, and that would put him in a very, very unique and special group of guys who have won 5 or more rings. Guess what? Right now, there are only 2 of them. Charles Haley's got 5 rings, and then, of course, we know Tom Brady has got 7. But if Joe Thuney wins on Friday, he joins the 5-ring club. There would be 3, and a new member added to that exclusive membership list. 888-546-4620. So you heard about Patrick Mahomes. He still talks about, the nightmare of facing the Buccaneers. That's a game that still haunts him to his day, and think about this, the Brady-Mahomes conversation has already started. And if Mahomes wins on Sunday, I think you would have a bigger case to be mentioned in the same breath as Tom. But just remember, his 2 most bitter defeats, I'm talking about Mahomes now, have come against Tom Brady. Brady beat him twice. And by the way, Brady did it with 2 different teams. AFC Championship game back in 2018 season, 2019, when Brady was with the New England Patriots. Obviously, that was at Arrowhead. That was a game where Tony Romo was calling out all the plays. Brady was able to best Mahomes there. And, of course, Brady switches teams, and he beats him in the Super Bowl as a member of the Buccaneers at Raymond James Stadium. So he's like, all right, I already beat you once, you whippersnapper. Here's what I'm going to do just to show off how great I am. I'm going to switch teams. I'm going to go to another team, and I'm going to beat you again, this time in the Super Bowl. So keep that in mind when you're talking about the whole Brady versus Mahomes dynamic, because Brady's beaten him twice. And I know Joe Burrow's beaten him once. And look, Patrick Mahomes is on his way to just an incredible career. His trajectory is taking him into the same stratosphere as a Tom Brady. And look, 17-3 is nothing to sneeze at in the postseason. That's incredible. And when you break down the 3 losses, 2 of the 3 have come against Tom Brady, and the other one came against Joe Burrow. And, he's got an opportunity on Sunday to make it a 3-peat. That's something that Brady has never done. So that would be a check mark in the Mahomes column. And look, I think he's motivated to do so, and he's going to have to do it against, a an Eagles defense rather that is very good. Vic Fangio's done an incredible job. They get after the passer. Jalen Carter, by the way, and the injury report has been released. Jalen Carter was limited at practice today with that illness. Kenneth Gainwell has got a concussion issue as well as a knee injury. He was limited. Brandon Graham activated off IR. He's got a chance to play on Sunday for the first time in a couple of months. He was limited with an elbow. And Devontae Smith, the receiver, has got a hamstring injury. He was limited as well. And the other guys, I'm not even going to mention the guys who put in full practices, Zach Bond, Landon Dickerson, Dallas Goedert, Cam Jurgens, among those. Those guys will be all set and ready to go for the big game here on Sunday. So Jalen Carter misses media availability. He's sick. He was limited at practice. I don't expect him to miss the game on Sunday. There's no way. This is the biggest game of his life. It's Wednesday. By the time Sunday rolls around, I think he's going to be all set and ready to go. We'll talk to Cynthia Freeland coming up in about 15 minutes or so. So the news of the Buccaneers. You know about Mike Greenberg, and, we had Thomas Dimitroff on earlier on the show, and he was great, by the way. I mean, that was the kind of insight that I was looking forward to hearing from him. That's why we booked him on the show, and he was awesome. He talked about, the process that you would have to go through if you decide to pursue a player like Myles Garrett. And it takes place at every single level of your organization. I mean, you're the GM. You've got to get with the coaching staff. And then you've got to get with your scouting department. You got to figure out, okay, what are his projections if we make a trade for this guy for 2025, 6, 7, so on and so forth, because we're going to have to give this guy a new contract, which means ownership is going to have to obviously buy into it, and they've got to sell off on the idea as well. So you're going to need the Glazers involved. We're thinking about giving Myles Garrett $35 to $40 million a year. Then you got to turn around. You got to give him 2 number ones to Cleveland, and maybe a little bit more than that. That's why I think it's highly unlikely. But it was certainly a fascinating read and insight into what it takes to pull off a deal of that magnitude. So certainly appreciate Thomas Dimitroff for joining us here on the show, and I thought he was fantastic in doing so. And he also talked about, Liam Cohen, that entire situation there. And Thomas Dimitroff also, interviewed for the Jets general manager opening, and the Jets interviewed a lot of different candidates, and he talked about what that interview process was like. You're stuck in a room with ownership for a few hours, and you're trying to present to them the vision of that team. What is that team going to look like? And he went in there and he told Woody Johnson, listen, this is my vision for the Jets, and it doesn't include Aaron Rodgers. I thought that was a really interesting revelation out of Thomas Dimitroff, which he's made that on some other shows too, but he also, prefaced it by saying, look, Aaron Rodgers, I think he's still a really good player. He's a Hall of Famer, yada, yada, yada. But, for this particular situation, I don't see him being a part of my plan and my vision. So really interesting stuff. If you miss any of those interviews, Thomas Dimitroff joined us earlier today, and we certainly had Craig Mucklow from Caesars, and he was letting us know what it looked like in terms of the Caesars Sportsbook and some of the great prop bets that people laying some money on. 95.3 WDAE.com. Check it out. You can also get commercial-free podcasts of this show through the iHeartRadio app. But a lot of interesting prop bets that a lot of bettors are putting some money on. Saquon Barkley, as you might imagine, anytime touchdown, and his rushing yards prop is 112.5. And Craig Mucklow told us earlier today that a lot of bettors are going over on Saquon Barkley and his rushing yards prop. And I can certainly understand that. I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to turn up the heat, and he will do whatever it takes, pardon the pun, like our guys over at Moss Nissan, to make sure that Saquon Barkley doesn't beat them. If the Eagles are going to win this game, Jalen Hurts has to throw the ball down the field and make plays in the passing game. That's why I like A.J. Brown and his receiving yards prop. It's 71.5. I'm going over on that. The other thing I'm going over on is Patrick Mahomes' rushing yards prop, which is 28.5. I like that as well. I'm going to go over on that. And I think Xavier Worthy, who has become a big part of the Chiefs passing game, a lot of attention will be paid toward Travis Kelce. Xavier Worthy, 54.5 receiving yards. I think I might bet the over on that as well. So really interesting props. Of course, you could bet on things like, heads or tails, the coin toss, Super Bowl halftime show, and everything else in between. So really great day of interviews. Greg Auman was on with us. We talked about the Bucs hiring Charlie Strong as their new defensive line coach, a whole Myles Garrett thing. Levante David, is he coming back? What about Chris Godwin? Is he coming back? And the whole Liam Cohen fiasco. And the fact that Mike Greenberg decided to say thanks but no thanks to being a general manager and interviewing up in Jacksonville and not following Liam Cohen, that just shows you how loyal he is to the Buccaneers, A, and B, the guy is smart. He knows that if he goes to Jacksonville, how long does he think that's going to last? If he sticks it out here, you're already part of a winning team, a winning culture, and you can buy time. And if the Buccaneers take the next step next year and make a deep playoff run, or, knock on wood, if they can make it to a Super Bowl, by the way, next year it's in San Francisco, and hopefully we can get there as well, then you're talking about your profile being elevated even more significantly if you're Mike Greenberg. You've been here for 15 years. He's showing Jason Light, his good friend, and, his colleague, respect. He's showing the Glazers respect. You guys bet on me. We've got something special going here. Even though I want to become a general manager in this league, I am not going to go work for that guy. And that guy, of course, is Liam Cohen, because I don't know. Shut up. I don't know how long that's going to last. And he's right. You know, it might be a long ceremony, but it could very well be a short honeymoon for Liam Cohen up in Jacksonville. And I think Mike Greenberg sees right through that. He understands that. So Thomas Dimitroff was very interesting in lending the insight into that, as well as Greg Auman. A lot of things happening with the Buccaneers as we head into the Super Bowl. And, of course, you know, you got the Combine coming up, and the Bucs will certainly be interested there, and interesting to see, you know, which players they decide to focus their attention on. And obviously on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be all over that. They're going to be all over the edge rushers. They're going to be all over the linebackers and the defensive backs and the corners and everything else. And the Bucs are going to be all about that at the Combine. So there's a certain process. And look, Jason Light knows what he's doing. He has nailed the last two drafts, actually the last, you know, probably three, the last four, going back to 2020. You know, the 21 draft wasn't great, but 2020, 22, 23, 24. I mean, three of the last four drafts have been absolute grand slams by Jason Light and the Buccaneers. That's why they're in the position that they're in. One of the youngest teams in the NFL, and they are going to get even better, I think, as time rolls along, because they have solved the most important equation on this football team. Who's your quarterback? Boom, Baker Mayfield. Career year, 29 years old. He is your guy now for the next, I don't know, God willing, 8 to 10 years, hopefully, if he stays healthy. So it's a beautiful thing, and the Buccaneers are certainly on the right track. We are live here on Radio Row. It's starting to die down just a little bit. Earlier today, it was just absolutely out of control. You know, we were trying to run down a few people. We're still trying to run down several people, you know, for tomorrow. And, of course, on Friday. Friday is going to be an absolute zoo here. It's going to be a circus, so we can hardly wait for it. And Nick Wise doing a great job of picking fights with people and also, you know, booking guests, you know, today, tomorrow, and into Friday.
Mad Dog is a lock.
Tomorrow.
We got Mad Dog tomorrow.
1:30.
Well, yep, 1:30. So we'll do it live on YouTube and play it back. It'll be great.
I can't wait.
I didn't realize. I forgot he was on. They said, you know, 2:00, and that was when he was available to. I was like, oh, we'll do 2:00. They're like, no, he's on the air, and I'm like, oh, that's right, he's not on at 3. The time change keeps getting me, but he's on the same time as us, so he's going to do us right before his show. We'll get him on. It'll be great.
That will be awesome. So Chris Madden, Tammy, boy, what a disgrace you are down in Tampa, oh boy. So obviously I worked with him many, many moons ago at WFAN. I almost went to work for him at Sirius, and that's another story back in 2008. And then, like, you know, the stock market crash, and then that put the kibosh on that. But that is going to be freaking epic.
He's such a cool guy, because when we were talking to him the other day, you know, I got a hold of his handler, and his handler was kind of pushing me out, and Chris was like, no. His name, he gave me his name. His name is, I can't remember his name, Phil or something. He's like, he will hit you back, I promise. And he did, which was cool. Mad Dog made sure of it. So props to Mad Dog.
That is awesome. So Christopher Mad Dog Russo on the show tomorrow, booked, locked in. I'm telling you, that is going to be epic radio. You need to get here for that, because we're going to be reminiscing about some things too, because, you know, we worked together way back in the day up at WFAN. All right, Cynthia Freeland is on her way here. She is coming up next. What are her thoughts and her projections for the big game here on Sunday? You got some valuable fantasy advice from her throughout the football season, and now she's going to be here coming up next. Cynthia Freeland from the NFL Network will join us next here live from Radio Row. Stay with us.
You're tuned in to The Drive with T.
was. And it has been a party here in New Orleans. Welcome back. We're live on Radio Row, The Drive with yours truly, Tom Krasnicki. Nick Wise is also here with me. Chris Mathis back at our Root Air and Water Studios. Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network will join us in a matter of moments. But as we await her arrival, I want to tell you about my guys over at Catania. Catania, guys, you need to protect your rights. If you or someone you love happens to be injured or the victim of someone else's negligence, car accident, product liability, medical malpractice, Social Security disability, these are the guys you need to call. They've been at it for 30 years. They don't get paid unless you get paid, but they've been getting a lot of money for their clients. They're representing yours truly. After I was involved in my injury accident, they can represent you as well. I can tell you, man, they've had my back ever since the day it happened. They will have your back as well. So hit them up. Tell them I sent you. 813-222-8545. Copy that number. Save it into your phone because you might need it one day. That's 813-222-8545. Or get a free evaluation of your case online at Catania and Catania.com, where they put families first. Office Tampa, not an attorney spokesman. All right, we're live here on Radio Row. It is 6:35 on your ride home here on WDAE. We're awaiting Cynthia Freeland to join us from the NFL Network, and we've got some big guests planned for tomorrow and then Friday. We're so excited to be here on Radio Row with all these great interviews that we've already had today and this week. I mean, you knew it was going to be a good week when we opened our first show from Radio Row on Monday with Gerald McCoy. And Gerald McCoy, you know, made it a point of getting here and wanting to be on our show, even though his handler told us, look, we got to go this place and that place and everywhere else. Gerald's like, no. This guy's Tampa. This is Tampa. They are jumping to the front of the line. So, and Gerald was great. And we've had so many of other interviews since then. Thomas Dimitroff was great today, and we're going to have some great interviews tomorrow. And we've got another great interview right now. She's with us live in the flesh. Cynthia Freeland, how are you?
I'm so happy to see you in person.
Likewise. You look great.
Thank you.
Everything is great.
Tiring, man.
I know. So when you walk into this building, especially you get pulled in so many different directions, don't you? My goodness.
It's cool. I'm just lucky anyone cares. Like, that's great. Like, that's awesome. It's amazing the energy never gets old, right? Like, the fact that this many people care about something that's not to be like whatever, like, it's not real. Our jobs, we have fake jobs. And so we're just lucky to be able to do them.
Yeah, we're not solving the world's problems.
No, there's no surgery involved.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that is happening here. By the way, all of Tampa Bay, my listeners want to thank you. You helped a lot of people win fantasy games and fantasy championships with your great advice throughout the year. So we're greatly.
Yeah, no, listen, anytime. I love you. And, obviously Tampa's fun. My in addition to Sarah, who's one of my favorite people in the whole industry and my actual friend, my best friend from Michigan also moved down to the area. So, even more people down in your area that I love.
Well, look, Tampa's a great place to be. There's no question about that. So Cynthia Freeland is with us. You're getting ready for the big game on Sunday. So what are some of your projections so far? Have you worked them out yet?
I have. I'm a little surprised because my gut would say Patrick Mahomes, but my math ahead of the season, it was Eagles over Chiefs. And for the last game, it is still Eagles over Chiefs. So, but just by 1 point. So, which feels crazy, but a higher scoring game than expected. But the Eagles take it. It's typically my model tends to favor the team with the better offensive line, the team that has more dynamic playmakers on offense, and the defense for the Eagles. It's hard to argue that they're not the better defense, although the Chiefs defense is awesome as well.
And that's the overriding narrative. I've spoken with so many people here, and everyone to a man, and you're repeating this too, is that the Eagles, and I agree with this too, I think the Eagles, man for man, I think they're better across the board. But I think the thing that you can't put a price on is Andy Reid, when he's got 2 weeks to prepare, you don't beat that guy.
Andy Reid coming off a bye, it's a thing. But also, we know the problems, and they know them too. The left side of the offensive line is not fixed. It's just not. So it will be a matter of how do you have, workarounds? What's plan B, C, D, and how do you, there's something where he's like, okay, we're gonna keep the guys who are in place, And that's probably because they have now figured out, what we've seen is we've seen Xavier Worthy being used as the motion man, not so much Travis Kelce anymore. With the O-line being switched, we've seen, Xavier Worthy, they shortened his average depth of target almost in half. They're not using him on the deep stuff as much because if there's pressure coming, there's just not time for that. They're just having him run in space. And that yak situation is very interesting because the Eagles are the best at limiting yak. The Chiefs are actually the second best at limiting yak on defense. But in terms of needing yak, the Chiefs have relied on it the most in Patrick Mahomes' career.
Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network is with me here live on Radio Row on The Drive on WDAE. It's so funny you were talking about Xavier Worthy because I was talking to the Caesars Sportsbook guy, the odds maker earlier. And
fun.
Yeah. His receiving yards prop, I think, is because I think he's more comfortable in the offense and they're opening up a lot of their playbook to him.
Yeah.
54.5 receiving yards.
Interesting.
And I think I'm going over on that. What say you?
I like that. I'm with you. I think it's going to be more than that. I mean, the only problem you could have is if it's a handoff. He could legitimately get it on a handoff, which doesn't count for your receiving total, but whatever. But the one I really like, and I think is low-key not getting enough talk, is a Noah Gray over 1.5 receptions.
No.
I know that sounds stupid because he had 1 reception last game, but I think this is an Andy Reid moment where what we've seen is in the playoffs, Andy Reid he's all season long, they were the number 1 teams in terms of using 12 personnel, so 2 tight end sets in the red zone. In the playoffs, they've gone way away from that, which just means they're saving it to swoop in for the last minute. But I think Noah Gray is certainly going to catch more than 1.5 passes. 2. He just needs 2 to win that.
He could do that. And the other prop I love is Patrick Mahomes over 28.5 rushing yards.
He's taking 15 on average, 15% of his dropbacks result in a scramble. In the regular season, that number was like 5. That is a 3-fold increase. That is 300% more. That is a lot more. It feels very, especially with this defensive front coming at you, it feels like, you don't have to wait for tomorrow. There's no next week. This is it. Look,
and I knew you were going to have those numbers right there at the top. I mentioned that, boom, you mentioned it. And I think when the play breaks down, the off-script plays, those are things you can't predict. But when he senses that pressure, he knows when he can get out and run. And he's got Travis Kelce who understands, the scramble play and everything else. And those two guys are going to be lock in step. So everyone's talking about Saquon Barkley and 112.5 rushing yards. Where do you stand on that? Because, look, I think Steve Spagnuolo is a guy that you can't take lightly or take for granted because I think with 2 weeks to prepare, he did an extraordinary job. That blitz he called against Josh Allen was not one that he was ready for, and it turned out to be a big play. But I got a feeling that the Chiefs are going to go all out, and he's going to say, 26 is not going to beat me.
Yeah, the hard part I have with that particular number is, look, Saquon Barkley could break for an explosive play. We know it. It's a threat of happening quite a bit. The harder part for the Chiefs, and that's not really the problem for the Chiefs. Even if he scores on one of those explosive plays, that's actually not as big of a problem as if he starts to really average 7 yards a clip, 6 yards a clip, and not an average, meaning he ran 4 times and one of them was for 60 yards. So now his average looks insane. I'm talking about he's actually averaging over 5 yards a run. Then that just wears them down. And that, to me, that would be more likely how, the Eagles win the game as opposed to one of those. So I'm staying away from that particular number. I like Saquon to score a touchdown. I think that one sounds a little bit better.
Agreed.
But the explicit number to me, that's going to be very, because then you think about it, then what happens? Then Patrick Mahomes has to play in faster offensive sequences. Then they get the ball back more, which means more Saquon, more volume, more. So that to me is when I can see it. I have the number under that for me. I have them continuing their streak of holding us. This is the best tackling defense in all of football in the Chiefs. So I do have them holding him under 110 yards, which is a ridiculous thing to say.
It is.
But it's too close for comfort for me on that one.
I think I would go under. I can see like a 26 for 102.
Yep, that's right.
Kind of line.
That's right. And but then what happens? The Chiefs score on a really fast drive, and then he gets another 3 carries. Then you're screwed. So that's where I get a little scared of that one. I'd rather do, the one I think is more interesting for the offensive side of the Eagles is Devontae Smith to catch a pass that's longer than 19.5 yards. He's done it in I don't know, 6 of 8, something crazy like a very high number. And I think that will be where the sacrifice will be made. Is a Devonta? We're gonna, just like we saw 2 years ago. I think that they'll take those outside the numbers. Jalen Hurts has been great outside the numbers, specifically to AJ Brown. But you know what? Switch out the AJ Brown for the Devonta Smith in a certain situation and a 20-yard catch. Fine, that one feels more. I like that one better.
I like that one better, too, because the Chiefs are going to go all out to stop Saquon Barkley. That's going to open up some vertical shots down the field. Okay, Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network, certainly an honor to have you on in person after all the great fantasy advice you have given all of our great listeners. So you have this as a 1-point game.
I have it as the team that's unfavored is winning. I have the underdogs winning. So that's,
Score.
28-27.
28-27 Eagles. And who's the MVP?
If I were caring about this with my pocketbook, which I can't because I work for the NFL, I would do a tiny little bit on Jalen Carter, because while I think it's fun, Jalen Hurts, far more likely. Saquon Barkley, far more likely. Patrick Mahomes, far more likely. But there have only been 10 defensive MVPs in the past ever, which is, there's been 33 quarterbacks alone. But I think if Jalen Carter's super disruptive and he could easily win the MVP, that would be a good return on investment. The other ones are kind of boring.
Cynthia, always great talking to you now. Yeah. Great seeing you in
Great
person.
To see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to get Sarah out here.
Absolutely.
I think they're working her a lot. They're working her a
I saw her on TV, so we need to get with her as well.
Perfect.
Cynthia Freeland, awesome. Congrats on all of your success. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, guys, coming up next, final thoughts, the final drive, next, live from Radio Row. Stay with us.
WDAE Traffic Update.
memory in the NFL, and it came against our Buccaneers in the Super Bowl from just a couple of years ago, where the Bucs defense, by the way, a game plan that was drawn up by Todd Bowles, whom some of you still want fired, by the way, holding Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce in his prime, Tyreek Hill to 9 points and no touchdowns in a 31-9 triumph. Mahomes, trying to put that one aside, takes on an Eagles team that he's already beaten from a couple of years ago, and that will be a spectacle in itself. But Patrick Mahomes still haunted by the Buccaneers. Gotta love it.
The Final Drive.
It is The Drive, live from Radio Row, presented by our guys over at Moss Nissan, where their goal is to never lose your business over price. We certainly appreciate them for their support in getting us here to New Orleans. And Chris Mathis is also alongside. And look, if you're looking for a newer pre-owned vehicle, you got credit card debt that has you down, no problem. They've got the cure at Moss Nissan, right?
It's as easy as this, Tampa Bay, and you as well, Tom. No money down right now at Moss Nissan. Plus, no payments are due until the spring.
And that is a beautiful thing. I bought my last two vehicles over at Moss Nissan. And with every purchase, you'll get Moss Care. What is it? Lifetime oil changes and tire rotations for as long as you own the vehicle. It's a beautiful thing.
You're going to get hooked up with all of that. Of course, Moss Care, as you just mentioned, Tom, and so much more, including the largest Nissan inventory in the Bay Area.
They are awesome. They've got 3 convenient locations, by the way: Tampa, Newport Richey, and Brooksville. Or you can hit them up online at mossnissan.com. That's mossnissan.com. Moss Nissan, whatever it takes. All right. We want to thank all of the wonderful guests that joined us here today. From Cynthia Freeland, awesome to finally meet her in person. Yes, Greg Auman of FoxSports.com. Thomas Dimitroff as well, former NFL GM, as well as Craig Mucklow, the odds maker from Caesars Sportsbook. We had a fascinating discussion with him about some of the things you can bet on and the player props and the coin toss and Super Bowl MVP and everything else. It's been a terrific show live here from Radio Row. We've got 3 down. We've got 2 more to go. Tomorrow, Nick Wise, we are slammed, aren't we?
Yeah, we got some good guests. Mad Dog. I think we got some Bucs players stopping by. It's going to be a big day tomorrow. And, if you want to watch it while you're at work, we're streaming on YouTube, Twitter. And today, Rock Riley and I, we were just testing the audio. And we ended up doing a 2-hour show on YouTube. So we might do that tomorrow before you and Mad Dog take over.
But Tommy, what a disgrace.
I'm excited for that.
But you can't be doing that.
I'm excited for that one.
Dude, I can't wait. And I haven't seen Chris in many, many years. And we worked together many moons ago. That is going to be awesome radio. Chris Mad Dog Russo tomorrow. We're efforting Rob Gronkowski, Gronk tomorrow. Josh Grizzard, the new Buccaneer offensive coordinator, will also join us on the show. No, not that guy. That's the guy you replaced. Josh Grizzard will also join us on the show tomorrow. We got Let It Ride, some of the great prop bets for the Super Bowl. There's so much happening tomorrow. I can't wait.
And I'm working on Nobody Likes Him in Tampa, which is why he won't join us. But I've been trying to get Spencer Rattler to come on as well.
And you went up to him. He's like, Tampa?
Twice. And he went, Tampa? I'm like, come on, man. You can pro whatever. He's like, Tampa's not going to buy what I got.
Is that what he said?
Basically. He's like, it's not going to work in Tampa. So I'll try.
Well, you certainly try. But tomorrow's going to be an epic show, and we hope you guys can join us. By the way, anything that you may have missed, you get it online, 953WDA.com. Check it out. Click on The Drive. Commercial-free podcast of the show can be had on the iHeart app as well. Download it for free. Get it there. All right, that'll wrap up our coverage of Day 3 tomorrow. Huge show. We hope you can join us. Great job, Chris Mathis, back in Tampa at our Rude Air and Water Studios. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock for a very big show. Don't you dare miss it. You're dismissed.
Come on, get out of here!
All right, thanks, Tom.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, Chris.
You. Ow. Tom, he wants you to be available.
Where's my money, bitch?